So we have everyone but Fred Russo and David Dyer.
Okay.
I think I just saw Fred. Yep, there's Fred.
I'm here.
So I think we have a quorum.
Okay, excellent.
All right, I'll start recording.
Recording in progress.
All right, we're good.
Nikhil?
Okay.
Nikhil?
Yes, Michelle?
Oh, hello. I didn't see, is Joe Chadwick here?
I saw him.
Oh, you did? Okay, I must have missed him then.
I don't see him right now, though.
I don't see
Yeah,
him.
he was on. Okay.
I think he
disappeared.
bounced, but yeah.
Okay.
All right. I guess he jumped off.
Okay.
Oh, there he is again.
Okay, there's Joe.
There's Marcy. All right.
Okay.
Okay. And we don't know if Dave is coming, Dave Dyer.
Yeah, I did not.
Okay.
All right.
Well, okay, I have 7:01. I guess we can get started and Dave can join us later if he appears.
Okay.
So we'll call this meeting of the Branford Planning Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, March 19th, 2026. I have about 7:01 or 7:02 p.m. We'll start by introducing members of the commission and staff. Commission member Joe Chadwick. Joe, are you here?
Joe Chadwick is present.
Thank you, Joe. Commission member Fred Russo. Fred, are you here?
Fred Russo's present.
Thank you, Fred. Commission member Joe Vayuzo. Joe, are you here?
Joe Vayuzo is here.
Thank you, Joe. Commission member Marcy Pelusi. Marcy, are you here?
Marcy's here.
Commission member Sharon Hutner. Sharon, are you here?
Sharon's here.
And we don't see Dave Dyer, one of our alternates, but we'll recognize him if he does appear. Our staff this evening, our town planner, McKeel Wackers. McKeel, are you here?
Here.
Our assistant planner, Dan Robinson. Dan, are you here?
Here.
And our clerk recording secretary is Michelle Martin, lurking in the background. And I am Chuck Anders, chair. And I'll start by asking our secretary, Fred Russo, to read the notice of public hearing.
Legal notice, Town of Branford. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, March 19th, 2026 at 7 p.m. by remote technology to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the Commission's meetings agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Application PZ-26-6, special exception for an oversized accessory structure located at 19 Queech Road, Mary Beth Tucker, applicant and owner. Application PZ number 26-1, 4-lot re-subdivision located at 76 to 82 Tucket Road, modifications of prior approval, Vincenzo A. Capasso, trustee, applicant, and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Branford, Connecticut, 06405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to Planning and Zoning at branford-ct.gov. Branford Planning and Zoning Commission, C. Andres, chairperson.
Chuck Anders, chair. Thank you, Fred. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings, which is that the applicant goes first, makes its presentation, including any comments from consultants. At that point, we turn it over to the commission and staff, typically hear a summary of a staff report from our staff, open it up for questions and comments by commission members. At that point, we open it up for public comment. And we'll ask that you identify yourself for the record prior to any comments, make your comments. And In a moment, I ask McKeel or Dan to go over the process for this remote hearing, this Zoom hearing, and how you can do it and what buttons you need to press and so forth. After the public comment, we allow the applicant to respond to any public comments, and we may or may not close the public hearing depending on how it goes. So with that, McKeel or Dan, do you want to just review the process for participating when it's the turn of the applicant or the public to present or to comment?
All right, thank you, Chair. So I pasted the instructions in the chat. They are also on the agenda. Should you need to review it during the meeting, but if you wish to speak and you're using a computer with a microphone, please click raise hand in the participant window. If you're calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. Dial-in information is listed on the agenda. If you do not wish to speak, you may submit comments using the chat feature. We will monitor the chat the best we can, but speaking is preferred. A reminder, if you wish to speak, add a message in the chat, you must provide your name as required by Public Act 22-3. Again, all details are in the agenda. Chair?
Chuck Hendricks, Chair. Thank you, McKeel. Okay, with that, we're going to proceed with our agenda. And the first item on our agenda is the continuation of the public hearing on the commission-sponsored landscaping regulation. This is a regulation that has been proposed by staff and representatives of the commissions and the public. We've had a number of public hearings on this, and we continued it. My recollection is we sort of three reasons we continued it. One is we wanted to give the developer community or anyone, member of the public, even though I think we've had 3 public hearings on this, if there are any further comment, just to make sure that we received any additional comments from any perspectives, particularly developers, if that was a concern. That was sort of number one. And then also, I think there were some comments made at the last hearing, and I know Joe Chadwick had some extensive comments, and he has sent some proposals and suggestions to us that have been circulated. And then McKeel, I know you also had sent out some revisions based on the comments that had come in at the last public hearing. So what I'd like to do to start this, perhaps, well, why don't we start with McKeel? You can review with us any additions or comments or new things that you had recommended since the last public hearing, and then maybe we'll go from there to Joe and then open up to the public. The goal this evening, frankly, is I would love to close the public hearing, whether we vote on it or not. I would like at least get the public hearing component of this completed if we could. So with that, McKeel, you want to just review the changes and things that you've sent out to us?
I will. Let me share real quick and very quickly, because I think everyone has seen this multiple times, at least on the commission. The big changes I made was really a conversation following the last iteration of whether or not we need to have how we deal with residential. So I took out section 3. I think there was pretty broad consensus last meeting that was overly broad, and put in this phrasing here that really focuses the residential and the landscaping requirements to be applied to only projects with 5 or more residential units or non-residential new construction with projects over 5,000 square feet in a residential district. And then clarified more specifically that single-family dwellings on an individual lot are exempt from these regulations in any district. So it might be a non-conforming structure in a commercial district. So long as it's a single-family unit on one lot, then it would not apply. I did add in, there's the construction logistics. I think this was added in since last time. There was conversation about that there's other unforeseen needs when you're doing construction, that making sure the limits of disturbance don't unnecessarily constrict that. And they just clarified as 10 feet from the elements needed or improvements that we've addressed in this other improvements aspect. And then the last item I added was there was conversation I had that we should probably require them to mark physically on the site that during construction where the limits of disturbance exist, so that even though it might be on a map, that should be visibly identified on the site, so that does contractors who are not intimately familiar with the site plan don't inadvertently cut down aspects of the property that should not be disturbed. And those are the only changes that I addressed since the last meeting. So I'll stop sharing there and turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, McKeel. Any questions for McKeel about those things from commission members? Hearing none, then Joe Chadwick. Joe, you had articulated some concerns at the last meeting, and then you sent us some suggestions. Do you want to review your thoughts, Joe?
Happy to. I am looking at this purely from a how do you build it and how do you administer it standpoint. That's pretty much what I do for a living now. And the sort of lack of balance in the selection of numbers kind of bothered me. The fact that construction activity is not a defined term is disturbing. So within the text that I submitted, I think I pretty much covered everything that was bothering me and made sort of a step-by-step route to getting through this. One of the things I also suggested was that rather than indexing the limit of disturbance to the improvement, which is sort of, feature-based, to limit it to the impervious surface ratio, because that is something that cannot be exceeded on any site. And that would be a reasonable basis, in my opinion, to at least start the discussion and give a developer some guidance when it comes time to develop his logistics plan, which would actually delineate where things are and how things fit on the site. I spent a little time at lunch today putting together a spreadsheet, which I hope is a little more articulate and better focused than the one I showed last time. What I attempted to do in this spreadsheet, and there's actually two parts of it. One is developing a number for sort of a developable unit, which is essentially taking 250 square feet, which is a typical relationship to a car, coming up with the parking square footage, an attribute of drivable space to parking, threw a little bit in for a road. So we end up with a total building plus car of 660 square feet. Now, if we go to, say, a minimum zone for C zones, 60,000 square feet, for an example, take 0.6, which is the impervious surface ratio. We have 3,600 square feet available to cover with building and parking. So in this particular example, a one-story building, we'd have about 13,500 square feet per floor. If we had a two-story building, a little over 8,000, three-story building, 6,000. Gross square feet of the entire building is on the next line. Number of cars that would fit on the site, car area. So for lack of anything better, I just assumed this was a square, took the square root of it to get a size to develop a building offset area. So for the LOD, for the building offset area, a little over 29,000 square feet, 26 square feet. LOD area of the car, at a 10-foot offset, building offset at 45 square feet, is this row of numbers. So the entire project cover area ends up being about 36,000 square feet. The work area then which is the project cover area plus the LOD area, ends up being 71,067. It ends up being actually the entire commotion ends up being greater than the entire site area. Now, if we were, again, this is only a minimum site area. So if we wanted to take, say, on an acreage basis, 5 acres, we are in sort of a positive area, positive range for the gross, the amount of site area that is preserved as a result of the work. So this works well for really large sites, but for smaller sites, and again, for large sites, I don't know how many, 50 to 70,000 square foot buildings we get on average. I have not gone through and pulled the available sites, the available site areas are, but if we were to simply start with adding another 0.1 to the impervious surface ratio and say that's what you've got to work with, I think we wouldn't be far off. And while we don't have to hold them to it, they could demonstrate on a logistics plan a realistic method of going through the site and doing the work. I do not believe a logistics plan is burdensome. Any contractor that we would be working on a project of this size would be doing a logistics plan regardless, just for the sake of the safety plan and their EMRs. So that's pretty much where I stand at this point. I mean, we can go through the numbers, over and over again and come up with like what is the reasonable range, but having to pick just an arbitrary, 20 feet up to a certain point, 45 feet over a second point, and then 10 feet for other kinds of improvements. I think we're just begging for trouble in the future in terms of interpretation and making this thing work. So that's my feelings right now, and now I apologize. When I did the the share, were you seeing the spreadsheet or were you seeing the
We saw your spreadsheet.
Okay. Because the stop share thing jumped on my other screen.
Oh.
So there's a mathematical relationship to the size sites. And like I said, I do not know what size sites we have available. But the larger the site, the more likely it is we're going to want to be preserving soils, and the limited disturbance will play a much bigger role than a smaller site where you can easily overrun the total square footage of the site just simply by applying the rules as stated. And since we're stuck with applying the rules as stated as opposed to having interpretation, I'd rather build the interpretation and the permission into the regulation.
Okay, checking to share. Thank you, Joe. I think one of those I said earlier is to close the public hearing as we can, and we have the opportunity to discuss and debate the different methodologies that are proposed here as part of the deliberations. So we don't have to, because I think many of us would have questions from Joe, like to hear McKeel's comments and so forth. But we don't have to do that now. I kind of want to at least, if we can, to see if I'm glad you presented that, Joe, because I want to hear if there's any public comment about that. It's in the record. But my concern is with the other public hearings on the agenda, and that we could spend a lot of time on, just going back and forth among ourselves, which we can do anyway. And So my thought was at this time, let's, unless anyone has any particularly urgent questions, I'd like to open it up to the public. Is that okay with everyone?
Absolutely.
Fine.
Okay. Okay, great. So then let's open up the public, see if there are any public comments. Again, I see Peter has hand raised. So why don't we, Peter, comments?
Thank you, Commissioner Andrews. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. First of all, I've looked at Mikhail's the latest version that he presented, and I have no problems with any of the verbiage in that as it stands right now. And then I also looked at the suggestions that were proposed by Commissioner Chadwick. I do agree with the addition of in 6.3 C, the addition of sentences 1, 2, and 3 seem to make sense, even as an addition to Mikhail's version or to the current version. Maybe I don't understand it completely, but I have problems with the idea of substituting the logistics plan or a default 0.1 addition to the impervious ratio as a way of defining the LOD. I think it's problematic, and I think the original table of metrics works better with a clearer outcome. But specifically, if you looked at the idea of using logistics plan, that approach without clearly defined metrics to determine the LOD seems to me to be putting the determination of what is unnecessary development right back in the subjective lap of the commission without giving any clear indication other than your evaluation as to whether there has been excessive disturbance or development of the site. So to me, that's problematic with the idea of a logistics plan as the way of determining the LOD. If you look at the idea of adding 0.1 as a default approach for, if I looked at it for a large scale project, and if you had a large scale project which wanted to maximize the use of a site based on currently the allowable 0.6 impervious ratio, which is typical of most of the commercial industrial zones. If I'm interpreting it correctly, that would effectively limit the overall LOD, and the overall LOD includes not only the building and the pavement and the impervious areas, but also all of the interstitial areas and the landscape areas that are part of that overall plan. If you took the 0.6 and you added the 0.1 onto it, effectively you're limiting, if I'm interpreting it, you're limiting the overall development of that site to 70% of the entire site area. So no project would be able to fully occupy a site. And I'm thinking of if you had either a large commercial industrial project that was on, let's say for sake of visualization, just a large treeless flat site. To me, if I'm interpreting this, that would say that 30% of that site would be out of bounds for development. You couldn't, a developer couldn't develop right up to the property line, even with the appropriate setbacks from property of buildings and pavement, et cetera. So that to me is problematic. And then conversely, if you looked at a small project using the 0.1 default approach, if you looked at a small project that was on a very large parcel, so you have obviously excess property, but it's part of the parcel. Using the 0.1 default approach might allow, if I'm looking at the math correctly, might allow actually a limit of disturbance which is unnecessarily large and far greater than one limited by the LOD metric table that has been previously proposed. So I see it, and again, this may be that I'm not interpreting Joe's concept correctly, but if I am, I think that it does create a bunch of problems that I would prefer the original. I think the previous metric approach, we moderated it with allowances that were made for logistic necessities and for grading necessities. So we gave some latitude beyond the those dimensions, those metric dimensions. But I think with those additional allowances, that the metric approach seemed to me to work well. And I would recommend keeping the table, even if you tweak the numbers within the table. But I think the approach of using the metric table works better. So that's it. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Peter. Are there other public comments from any members of the public that you see that wish to comment? McKeel or Dan?
Yes. Perry Maresca.
Perry.
Hi, Perry Maresca, Economic and Business Development Manager for the town of Branford. I just want to say, at the last meeting, you said, kind of see if maybe there's any additional comments or whatever, but as normal, people wanted to kind of stay anonymous, did not want to get involved, etc. But the synopsis, basically, of conversations was, not happy with having additional regulations that add to the costs and length of time to complete projects. However, do realize and appreciate efforts made to be a little bit more reasonable than what was attempted a couple of years ago. And acknowledgement and thanks were expressed to both the commission and those in town hall that worked through options that hopefully will result in more feasible regulations. So that's what I have to express based on what I've been told. And also what I agree with it. This is definitely an improvement from what was proposed in the past. And if, you guys continue to work this out, and just bear in mind the what works for the entire town, not just one direction, but both the resident, the citizen, the business, the developer, so that we can move forward in a positive manner in all respects. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Maresca. Are there other members of the public that wish to comment on this? McKeel or Dan, you see anybody?
I see a no,
Okay.
not a hand raise, just a hand clapping. I don't know if
who's
Shirley
that?
wants to talk.
Yeah, Shirley. Shirley, would you?
I just wanted to say that our first selectman, Josh Brooks, strongly supports this. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Sure.
Are there other members of the public who wish to comment? Does anyone see anyone from any other public members?
I do not.
Okay. Joe Chadwick, do you, there was, do you have a, do you want to comment on Mr. Henschel's comments? Just, he had some parts that he thought were good, and that, but he, I guess, did not prefer the methodology that for the additional impervious surface versus setback requirement.
Well, we can discuss a ratio for impervious surface. The initial intent of all that was, I believe, to come up with a quantifiable basis to proceed with determining a limit of disturbance. My problem with giving a specific number for an offset was that the different circumstances on every site would not necessarily be conducive to that particular offset dimension. It may be in some cases too much. It may in some cases be too little. If there is a significant feature within the limit of the 45-foot limit, are you entitled to ignore that significant feature? That's why I was specific that the landscaping inventory be used to develop the um, logistics plan. This is something that is. I mean, if you've ever done work on the Yale campus or on certain large campuses for medical facilities, this is always just a huge thing that needs to be worked out way ahead of time. Whether there have significant ornamental plantings in urban environments, do you have certain utilities? Yeah, the whole idea of a logistics plan is not a novel concept. And it's not an additional burden on a contractor to perform. The determination of the math, and I think arriving at a fixed point of what is a reasonable number, I think that probably is the place where we're stuck at this point. So I'm willing to talk. If I have a better idea of what we have as an inventory of developable space, it'd be really easy to plug that into the spreadsheet. We can see what works for different size buildings, different areas. Chances are pretty good people are going to want to push things. If you're going to develop a piece of property, you're going to develop it as hard as you can. That was the assumption of the impervious surface ratio. If you're going to be building a building less than the impervious surface ratio, then having a number indexed off of that is to your benefit in having just square footage to mess with in the logistics plan. But I really think that having a negotiated logistics plan as opposed to having, a stipulated area is the most reasonable approach.
Chuck in, sure. Thank you, Joe. I think Mr. Henschel, did you have, we're about to, I think, close the public hearing. We'll have further discussions among commission members, but I wanted to give you the opportunity, since you've been contributed so much, if there's any further comments that you'd like to make.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm satisfied with where we are right now in terms of the current proposal. As I say, I understand. I think Joe's comments, I think some of them are appropriate. I do think that the table works better, even if the numbers are tweaked. That the table approach works better to defining the maximum limits of disturbance, and trying to keep you out of the situation where you have to subjectively make a determination that a site is being unnecessarily developed, which is part of the original intent, I think, of the regulations to sort of develop unnecessary or limit unnecessary development on sites and preserve as much of the natural landscape is that left. But no, I'm satisfied. I'm sure the commission will deliberate and resolve this, but I really don't have anything further to add. Thank you.
I'll only just say one more time, is there any other member of the public that wishes to comment? Seeing none, then my suggestion is that we close this as a public hearing, and then we could, depending on how the rest of the meeting goes, we can bring this up and start discussing this further later on in the agenda. Does that would be my suggestion. McKeel, does that work from staff side, do you think?
That will work from staff side. I agree. We have other applicants who we can probably deal with in an efficient manner and then get back to this and get some direction.
Okay, then. So we'll close the public hearing on item number 1. Thank you everyone that's contributed to that. And again, we'll see where we are and maybe bring this up later in the meeting, just depending on how everything else goes. And so thank you, everyone. So that brings us into item number 2, which is Vincenzo A. Capazzo, applicant and owner, 7682 Totoket Road, the 4-lot re-subdivision, which it's a new application, but it's also a modification of a prior approval. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that? I see a hand raised. Yes. Mr. Burton?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
We lost you.
He's muted.
Okay, you're good.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Sorry. Hold on. Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
All right. Okay now?
I believe so.
Okay. Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Bruton. I'm a professional engineer with BL Companies. Our headquarters are at 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. You've previously seen my colleague here, Tim Hool, on this application go around. I'm covering for him tonight. He's out of town and indisposed. If you guys would like, I'll keep this short and sweet, but I'll share my screen and just talk about the application, and then happy to answer any questions you guys may have. As the chairman introduced, right, this is Tucket Road. This was previously approved as a 4-lot single-family subdivision. There was a modification made, so we're coming back as a re-subdivision. It still remains a 4-lot single-family home subdivision. The major changes from the last one that was previously approved to now is that there's a different orientation of the road, slight curvature of the road. Still remains a private road with an appropriate cul-de-sac at the end for obviously access and emergency vehicles. Still is four homes, but the orientation of those homes has been adjusted slightly to make more sense with the curvature of the proposed roadway. And then the rear home here is just a little bit more detail from the owner on the size and orientation, the architecture of that home. That's been updated as well. So that really was what drove the bus in terms of revisions. And obviously we've updated the associated details for stormwater, landscaping, grading, erosion control. Those have been reviewed by the town engineer, are in, have no comments or compliance with the technical regulations. This new orientation for the 4-lot does comply with your subdivision and zoning regulations. That's kind of a quick 5-minute recap of where we were and where we are. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Second is Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bruton. McKeel, did you prepare the staff report on this one?
I did. So Matt, if you could turn the share or discontinue sharing, I can. Thank you. All right, so I'll go through. So this is obviously a 4-lot re-subdivision. This is back before the commission a third time. This is in the Pine Orchard Zoning Association. So we are creating lots based on the Pine Orchard zoning regulations, but the town of Branford still holds subdivision authority over Pine Orchard. That's why the commission is reviewing it. The reason why this is back as essentially a new re-subdivision is because of the Connecticut General Statute talks to the re-subdivision is defined as anything that affects the layout of a street. Since they did change the layout of the street, as I've shown here, the previous layout sort of curved to the south, and now we have one that curves to the north. Changed the lot dimensions, and the new, at least the resulting dimensions of the lot were non-conforming, and therefore they had to come back with a new lot design in order to conform to the Pine Orchard zoning. We did circulate this to departments. No significant comments. It complies with the regulations. And I took the findings and the conditions from the previous 2 approvals and sort of merged them together to ensure that we covered our bases with what we had currently just decided upon, and then also just a number of the conditions related to the site construction of the road, which is now in place and no longer needs to be constructed. So I took those out. This is a subdivision that's based on the regulation that allows transfer to relatives. That allows you to not do open space requirements. That was approved by modification back in 2024. I do have a condition that just reiterates that that's the purpose of this current layout, and that we need an affidavit to ensure that that is adhered to. And I know we might want to consider how to address that even further potentially. And then the others, the East Shore Health District still needs to approve the septics for all the lots. And then the other, I added in the dust control because I know that has been an issue at the site. I want to make sure that is continued to adhere as the actual buildings are constructed. And then I have a final statement that all other conditions and approvals shall remain valid, subject to the change in the road and the lot divisions. I will stop sharing and turn it back to the chair.
Candace, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wackers. We'll open up for questions, comments from commission members before we open to the public. I have one question, which is sort of a basic question of what happened. I mean, it looks like that looks like a significant change in the way the road was done. If you were, did the contractor just not follow the plans, or what happened?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Bruton again for the record. My understanding from the owner and contractor was that they did encounter some significant ledge in the place where the roadway and the cul-de-sac was being placed on the original layout. That forced them to kind of pivot to the change where it swoops up to the left now to kind of create some distance between that kind of immovable surface.
Would have been nice to get approval, I guess, before you did it. But
Mr. Chairman, I completely understand here. We're in the position of asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. So duly noted.
Yep. Okay. Other questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Sharon.
Yes, I think I have to reiterate your comment, Chuck, as to what happened. I mean, I think that, we as commissioners, we take our positions very seriously. We look at the plans and we review them and we approve them depending upon the conditions that are specified in the approval. And then when we see changes happen without the commission being consulted, it's very frustrating. I'm personally very disappointed with the applicant, especially since the original plans called for limits of disturbance, which would have led to, which is supposed to lead to, unnecessary clearing of a parcel, which would have left trees that would have helped the health and welfare of themselves, the people who are living there, and their neighbors. But anybody who has looked at that parcel can see that it was clear cut. So it seems to me that the applicant completely ignored that condition of approval. And now we're looking at the plans again, and we're looking that the road orientation was changed, and which has rendered one of the lots non-conforming. And now you're asking for forgiveness. And I think the commission should have been consulted before that change had occurred. Very happy to see that we're adding additional language to make sure that the land transfers do stay in a family arrangement, so that all of a sudden we don't have to be surprised about some other kind of transfer and have to forgive you about the open space requirement. So I'm just really kind of disappointed that this application has proceeded the way it has.
Understood.
Thank you, Sharon. Other comments, questions from commission members before we open up to the public?
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred?
I recall when this application came before the commission, there was lots of discussion about drainage, and I think that took a good part of the time in deliberating on this. And it seems like it had to do where the road was going, where the water was going to go, and how it would end up. And I don't know the logistics or the engineering of all this. All I know is that I agree with Sharon that it was changed without, consulting the planning department or the commission. And so I don't know whether or not that change is going to affect the kind of water runoff that we had long discussions about. I find it insulting that we had these long discussions and we think we've got it down pat and everybody agrees to it. Then you come to a meeting and say, "Hey, guess what? We changed it." And I don't think that's fair. This isn't a confessional, where you get forgiveness here. This is just trying to follow rules and regulations. And so I agree with Sharon on that regard. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time doing this. Okay, I don't think it's fair to, as they say, all of us have come here and give our time freely so that we get the best for our town. And I don't think it's fair when an applicant comes here and promises one thing, then just takes it upon himself. Mr. Bruton said that, well, they found there was ledge, and there's ledge all over Branford. This isn't the first piece of ledge that anybody's ever discovered, and there's ways to take ledge and reduce it or remove it. We've done lots of those as well. So to make a statement like that, I think it's kind of almost insulting. I think that this is a very forgiving commission when they come before it and ask for something, but to come before the commission and expect forgiveness, I don't think that's fair. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Bruton, do you want to comment?
Yeah, so to Commissioner Russo, we did update the grading and drainage plan to reflect the new roadway orientation to make sure that we're balancing pre versus post flows compared to the impervious area of the layout that I had up on the screen. That was reviewed by the town engineer and found to still be in compliance with your town regulations and the Connecticut Stormwater Design Manual. So at that point, obviously that's on the plan and been reviewed internally by town staff. I really have nothing else to say in terms of everything else. I can't disagree with any of your statements in terms of the disappointment and what you feel. I agree with what you've said.
May I ask a question? Marcy, here. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, Chuck.
Yeah, Nancy, yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious. You're the second engineer, right? There was a different engineer that did the original plan, if I'm remembering this.
BL Companies has been the engineer throughout. My coworker was here at the last one. He was involved with the redesign of this. He's just not presenting tonight because he has another engagement.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking of I think I'm thinking of another site plan. That's all. And I'm just trying to place if there was a change in engineers, because to me that could explain a lot in the the road alignment in general and just different engineering techniques. I mean, I trust that you've accounted for the changes, and I would just ask, was there something that happened in the family dynamic that a family member wanted a smaller lot, or that helped facilitate this, or is this truly a function of really not anticipating the ledge and doing deep test pits before starting the project and the engineering?
Yeah, Commissioner, we did test pits obviously related to the septic design, but obviously we've worked on a lot of residential projects and commercial projects. There's always some surprises that do happen during construction. I can't speak to any of the family dynamics, and all I can tell the commission is we're here to advise the applicant. It's really up to the applicant to tell us and pay us to do what and when to do it. So I'm here now because the applicant has had us come back to you. I would have advised of other things at different points as the progress progressed along, but all I can say, I'm here now, and I can very much speak to the technical aspects of the project but not much of more of the background.
Okay, thank you.
Comments from commission members before we open up to the public.
Joe Chadwick speaking. Yeah, in reference to Sharon and Fred's comment, this is not the first time this has happened, and we really have no recourse in the regulations except to sit here, wag our fingers, and be upset and rubber stamp whatever comes in. So I think if for future regulation revisions, this is something we need to take into account. Thank you.
Chuck Industry, thank you, Joe. I've heard of for after the fact applications, which I put this happens a lot in wetlands, that there's like an extra application fee or something. There's a double or something like that, but it's sort of built-in penalty or something like that. Other questions, comments from commission members before we open it up to the public? Hearing none, then does any member of the public wish to comment? It looks like Peter has his hand raised. Mr. Henschel.
Great, thank you, Chairman Andrus. This is Peter Henschel speaking. Just a quick question for the applicant. I know that the town currently is dealing with a couple of situations. One is in Jefferson Place, where there's a question of whether the road was public or part of Branford's town roads or private, and then obviously maintenance, plowing, etc., end up being issues. So I thought I heard that this was going to be a private road, and if that is the case, then there would be no expectation on the part of the owners that the town would participate in either its maintenance or plowing or other normal public activities. Is that correct?
Correct. Private road.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Henschel?
No, that's it. Thanks a lot.
Great. Other members of the public wish to comment? Anyone see anyone? Okay, McKeel, you are muted, I believe. Okay, it looks like I see one hand here, Christopher Curl.
Yeah, you're muted.
You need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you, sorry.
There we go. Sorry about that. The little meeting notice was blocking my unmute button. My question for this is, what's the point of the meeting if there's no recourse? Like, I do remember at the initial public hearings, they were talking about, so my property is directly adjacent to the back lots where they're now planning on putting a pool and a pole barn and a veranda, whatever the hell they're putting back there, which that's great. I'm fine with that, but they said they were going to address drainage. And just during this last storm, since this is my first year experiencing my yard now after a heavy rain, I had a little river down my driveway. So that was kind of cool. That was new to me. Are they expecting to do any more blasting? I do know that they also said that they weren't going to clear the lot. There was a certain amount of trees marked for retention on the initial plan. And this is like, the Thneed. They just wiped it all out. They called in a company. They cleared the entire lot. They brought it all up to Canada. There's not a stick or twig. They blasted for 6 months continually. Them saying that ledge was the problem, they were blasting for 6 months continually. If ledge was a problem, they blew through it. So what's the point of having any of these meetings? And you're like, well, maybe we'll double the application fee next time. I mean, I now have a drainage problem in my yard. I'm certain that my neighbors didn't have a great time because luckily I was in the right wind position where my yard wasn't decimated, but I happen to know that my direct neighbor over here, Mr. Tweed, his house, like he and the people that were beside me, I lucked out, but they were blasted every day with dirt and dust, and I mean their living conditions were garbage. And what's the point of having this commission if they violate what their plan was, and now you have no recourse? Is there anything, or what's the point of this?
Well, you're asking two questions. One is sort of a general question, which is if someone doesn't follow their plans, are we obligated to approve it if the plan they do submit does conform? And how do we know if we're going to follow that? What is the penalty for failure to follow plans? Which is an interesting, not question. It's an enforcement question, relates not just to this application, although it certainly applies to this application, but otherwise. And it's sort of a general question. And we can talk about that and talk about different options that we could do that. There are fine provisions and other things that I don't know if we're taking advantage here, but there are a few things on the books that I'm aware of that may have applied. The other question, though, I mean, you asked some specific ones, some drainage related questions, which I'm kind of, I would love to hear the applicant's engineer respond. I mean, the two questions I heard you from is the blasting done? I mean, my sense is if it probably is, but I don't know. Is there going to be more? That's a fair question. And then the second question I got out of that was, what is this? You know, is the drainage okay? And maybe we got an engineer here. I know our town engineers reviewed it, but maybe we can go over that as well. Because as Fred had noted, that was a big issue, I think, at the first time around. So I hope, Mr. Kerr, I'm trying to characterize your issues, and I want to make sure everyone from the public speaks, but these are the questions that we will review. So
they've now elevated the property sits higher than all the adjacent lots, and I'm not sure as to the grading as to which way it's going. But now the entire, they've essentially made a flat, I don't know what you want, a flat piece of land adjacent to both myself and the Tweed properties, and without going out there with a level and some type of surveying equipment, trying to figure out which way the grade is going. I just know that I'm getting a lot. I can't say for sure that I'm getting a lot more. I just know that during this first heavy rain that we just experienced, my property that is directly adjacent to theirs was like a little pond, which it hadn't been in prior years. So that was new for me. I'm not sure as to Mr. Tweed if he experienced the same thing, but now if they do more blasting, how's that going to affect it? Is it going to get worse? It's just, if they're not complying and they're saying, hey, we're going to do this, and then they don't do it, and then you go, oh, well, that's a bummer. What's the point of the meeting?
No, I understand. Fair questions. Let me ask, Mr. Burton, can you respond to there are two questions. Is there going to be more blasting? And number two, what about you hear the neighboring property owners experience? I know you're pinch hitting tonight is what it sounds like, but I assume they sent you here because you're familiar with the plan and you're the responsible guy. So what can you tell us about those issues?
Matt, we don't hear you. Are you, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, I am the man. I'm responsible here. So, yeah. So, in terms of the blasting, as far as I know, the blasting is complete in terms of the site development, in terms of the overall grading of the property to the proposed condition that I've shared on the screen. I think the only thing that I'm unaware of, and it may be a potential, is obviously there's some excavations for individual houses that would need to proceed when building permits are issued. I think I obviously understand the frustrations from the abutters and the commission on recourse for when a plan changes and it's happening in this fashion. Just to remind everybody that the applicant is stopped, right? He can't proceed with building his house until he does seek permission and approval from this board and your related staff and engineers. So I think I'll say I think the blasting is complete, but the applicant may need to do it when some of these foundations from some of these houses are built, and I'm not aware of the timetable to do that.
I'm not necessarily worried about the foundations of those houses. In the upper right-hand corner, that thing, there's a pool going in the back. Now, I was privy to watching, pieces of granite larger than my house going, 15, 20 feet in the air, and they got that level. So now if they're going to put a pool back there, which is what it looks like, and I'm presuming a foundation with a basement for the house, are there provisions for, I don't know, just better drainage or there's not a tree on that lot, which was very specifically in all the initial meetings, there was a certain percentage of, we're going to maintain large trees at this size, and there's not a stick on that lot. It was clear cut to the ground, below the ground, and beyond. So they didn't stick to that. What makes you think that anyone is going to abide by any promises they make right now?
Yep. So going back to the topic of drainage, so the proposed plan that was previously approved to this plan, we did submit a revised stormwater management report. And if anyone besides your town engineer has read that, obviously that characterizes the existing conditions, so the existing ground cover in terms of trees, grass, any impervious surface. And then it does compare it to this new proposed layout that's in front of you here for the increase in impervious area, the change in vegetation type. So us as engineers, we compare those two, the existing conditions versus the proposed desired conditions. And that's where we get the runoff coefficients for the change in surfaces. And then we evaluate that for a variety of different storm types, everything from a 2-year storm, which is in the range of potentially up to an inch in a 24-hour period, all the way up to a 100-year storm, which in some cases could be 7 or 8 inches in a 24-hour period. That follows the guidelines of not only your town regulations, but also the Connecticut Stormwater Manual. So the current state of the lot now, which is obviously different from what you guys saw previously, is accounted for in that stormwater management analysis. And what that analysis showed is, yes, we still need to have a significant stormwater management system on the property. So the goal of that stormwater management system is a lot of things, but the big really tenets are we need to maintain drainage patterns, right? So if water goes here, it should continue to go here. If water doesn't go there, it should continue to not go there.
Okay, so if I could say by experience, so I apologize for interrupting.
Can I finish, Mr. Chairman, before I get interrupted?
Yes, Mr. Britton, yes. Please, we want to hear from him and complete your comments.
Right. So stormwater management system there's a lot of things that go into it. One is maintaining drainage patterns. The other is making sure that when the change of impervious surfaces change, that we're accounting for that. So the pre-development flow and the post-development flow stay the same. And then the other thing is water quality, right? As rainwater hits a roof of a house, a sidewalk, a parking lot, it obviously can pick up things like salt, sand, trash, things like that nature that are common in our streets and commercial parking lots all over. So the system that's shown on this plan accounts for the new proposed coverage of this site. So there's a significant underground detention system that's like halfway down this new roadway. And there's also an additional stormwater management system at the bottom of the roadway as well. In general, the site goes to Totucket Road. There is a portion, as you can see here with my red arrow, that does go to the rear. We have to keep water flowing in those two directions, and we're balancing those flows. So the stormwater management system that was submitted as part of this application is a comprehensive review of existing and proposed conditions that balances those things. and it needs to be built in that fashion. That was reviewed by the town engineer, and maybe someone from the commission or the town staff can tell me, but my experience in Branford is post-construction and before a CO is issued for any of these houses, that you want to make sure that the plans have been built in compliance with the approved plans. And if that isn't the case, corrections need to be made, and a CO is withheld until those corrections match the spirit of this approval. So, granted, now with this in case, this is a very difficult time of year because the ground is frozen. We've had very significant snowfall, and we had the past couple of storms have been very, very warm. So we got a lot of rainfall on frozen ground with snow. So water is, at this time of the year, is always moving in slightly different directions because of snowbanks and because it's not allowed to infiltrate the grass. But I will say that this is a comprehensive stormwater system that's a great expense to the applicant to install, required by your regulations, and as a gut check is to make sure that's installed prior to final completion of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Bruton. Can I ask one other question, Mr. Bruton, and also this is for staff? I thought that the two main changes here were the location of the road, and because the road was changed, the lot configuration has changed. But one of the things I think Mr. Curl pointed out that I hadn't really focused on was that in the prior approval that you had flagged areas of significant trees to be retained. Is that correct? And that was just disregarded? Am I missing that? I don't know, Mr. Bruton, if that is correct, or McKeel, if you've looked at that, or, that issue. McKeel,
yeah, from staff, I think two comments. Yeah, there have been, the original subdivision approval had 10% open space, so the rear was to be kept in its natural state. That disappeared when the modification was granted under the creating lots for relatives provision in state statute. What did happen was somewhat different from what was even from that approval. I will go back to the comments from the neighbors. The reason why we're here is that the applicant had asked for their bond back because they believed they had done all the improvements that they were required to do, such as stormwater control. And when we saw that the plan was not carried out, we did not release the bond. We don't work really on penalties. We work on, we don't give you your approvals or your sign off until you come into compliance. So that's really what our role is in terms of at least staff role.
Right, how much are the bonds, McKeel?
They're significant. I don't know off the top of my head. I have to look, but they're well over $50,000. They could even be close to $100,000.
Okay. Okay.
Well, but you're saying that they come into compliance. So they violated what they said they were going to do, and yeah, sure, they can comply after the fact, post the fact, but that wasn't what they said they were going to do. Just like they said they weren't going to clear cut the lot, and it's really hard to add full growth trees back.
And thank you, Mr. Curl. McKeel, it sounds like I understand the difference between the family modification by state statute. They don't have to have any open space here because if it's a family subdivision, so we don't have any authority to require that. So obviously there were between version number 1, a bunch of trees were removed. But what I wasn't clear is to whether the recently approved plan that included, it was the family subdivision, so there was no open space. Did we require significant trees to be retained on that one, and that they disregarded that? That's what I don't know, and I don't know if you looked at that, and I don't know. Mr. Bruton, do you know that? You can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So this is an overlay plan, Mr. Chairman. The red is the prior layout, and the green is the current proposed layout in front of you now. So obviously you can see the road to shift and the orientation, obviously, of the bedrooms. But what you're getting at is I can show you so the limit of disturbance before, you can see the term LOD here, right? Shorthand.
Right.
Was in, right? The green did go to the property line. So there's a cluster of trees around some of the perimeters that is being requested to be modified as part of this in certain locations, right? As construction commences. Yes.
Did we have significant trees being retained last time that you're asking to remove this time? That's what I guess my question. Or have they already been removed without, even though the plan showed them? I see some trees there, but frankly I don't know. I'm not.
I guess I'm a little bit blind to this issue. I do know that obviously we do depict some large individual trees on the survey that you can see kind of where my hand is. Right, yes. And that was part of the design plans. I can go back to them here. A lot of some of the perimeter trees we don't define individually when it's like within a cluster of trees or a row. And I know we did push back. The applicant did push that back further from the original approved plan. I think they would know better than I would about the specific conversations at the last hearing if there was particular trees that were intended to be saved or not. But I do submit that there is a change in the clearing areas as on the proposed plan.
And I do see that there's a change in the limits of disturbance. I get that. But what I'm focusing on is the sort of light gray, trees that you had focused on earlier that are shown on the prior approval. Were those trees to be retained? I assume they were, but I don't know. And if so, are they now proposed to be eliminated, or have they been eliminated?
Yep. My computer is a little bit locked up. I think a lot of them are removed and were proposed to be removed because the significant grading to install the roadway. See, a lot of them are within the roadway or adjacent to the roadway or under the proposed stormwater management system. So a lot of these trees that are kind of in the open here in the middle of a lot are removed.
Okay, well, yeah, and maybe you're just lifting them. The original survey maybe had to show them on the survey, and maybe the approval showed them being removed. But my question was, you understand my question. My question is, did you remove trees that you said in the modified plan that would be retained?
All I can say, Commissioner, is I think the perimeter trees and the buffer to some of the residential butters is less now than it was before.
You're going by the limits of the change in the limits of disturbance.
Correct. I can't speak to individual trees or if you guys had any specific conversations, but I think what I'm hearing from the abutter is that this is clear cut now, which I think is not an unfair characterization of what I've been told has happened on site. And these plans reflect that situation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Let's hear from other members of the public. I see there's Ms. Tweed has her hand raised.
Hi, thank you. My name is Eileen Tweed, and I'm here with my husband, Bill. And we live at 11 Tweed Road, and our property is directly next to the 7682 Tucket Road, lots 1 and 3. My husband's family actually owned the property at one point in time. It is my husband's and my opinion that the road at 76-82 Tucket Road was deliberately and knowingly constructed not according to the approved plans and the Mylar, and the owners are now asking for a hardship and forgiveness. And we're kind of, as the conversation has been going on here, at a loss as to how we actually got to this place. With the engineers, engineering companies, Town of Branford engineer, DOT personnel, zoning from Branford and Pine Orchard, how no one saw that the road was not in the right place. We're actually baffled. Seems crazy to us. And since the road was changed, again, going along with the conversation of this evening, the drainage system, was that changed? How it was changed? Who approved it? We were at meetings, and I know it was mentioned that along with the rock that was there, someone mentioned it was sand over by the railroad tracks. So along with the trees that were noted, We were told by one of the owners that they were only taking down the dead trees on the almost 8 acres. So I guess there were a lot of dead trees on those 8 acres. If left as is, this deliberate deception will potentially cause more intrusion on our privacy, plus future problems going forward. Lot number 3, which is directly behind our house, has been decreased in size by almost 13,000 square feet in total. This can potentially affect the positioning of the houses on this lot, as it's shown on the plan. Not to mention potential septic problems if these plans are not followed as well. The turnaround at the end of the street is now positioned directly behind our dining room windows, whereas it was not in the approved Mylar plan, bringing headlight issues and road lighting issues into play. From the beginning of this project, numerous approved plans were not followed from the get-go. Just to mention, the East Shore Health Plans Department's approval stated that a 5-bedroom house was to be built on Lot 4, where the plans show a 4-bedroom house, which is just another discrepancy. Also on Lot 4, which I now understand that the section of land out back where the pool and the pool house are going has been changed. The approved plans called for erosion control and dust control. We had to request that a water truck be brought into the site due to the unbelievable amount of dust. Most of the time, the truck sat empty on the sidelines unless we sent a text, email, or phone call. When it was used, it was only putting down water once in the morning and once in the afternoon, most of the times. I sent numerous emails to the town zoning and Pine Orchard zoning, receiving answers that they would speak with the owners and contractor. Nothing happened, nothing changed. Rock crushing and processing of material was another issue we dealt with. We had a full-blown quarry going on in our backyard. No water was used with the machines when this was being done. The grinding of the stumps and trees also had no dust control. Again, numerous emails and texts were sent, nothing was done. Finally, we contacted the DEP, who came to our property and noticed that violations were occurring and lodged them accordingly. Correction plans were to be submitted to the DEP. One of them stated that someone had paid to have our house power washed. This was an out-and-out lie. So they lied to the state DEP. Our house, which had a new roof at the time, was covered in dust. Our gutters were clogged in dust. All of our vehicles were covered in dust. And just to point out that some dust is toxic. For the erosion, we had to request that the silt fencing or socks be brought in and placed at the bottom of the tree berm, which is behind our house. According to the approved plans, weekly inspections were to be made for any erosion and also after significant rainfall. I requested from town zoning if this was being done, but could not receive an answer. I was constantly told they would check. We understand that DEP found this to be the same. Not one hay bale was ever seen on the site, even though it is stated in the plans they were to have them in different areas. On the neighborhood side of the tree berm, it is not finished. It is left with rocks, weeds, sticks, no grass, and the silt fencing is still there. In one area, the silt socks collapsed after a heavy rainfall. I had to contact the owner and the contractor, and they just put another row of silt socks on top of the buried ones. It's still there. Material piles were to have double silt fencing around them. That never happened until quite recently after the construction ended. Also, there was to have been seeding. Nothing. They were to have been watered down. Nothing. I emailed both zoning departments, and I'd like to know if the neighborhood side of the tree berm will be finished off. Will the owners be doing it? It's their property. Trees were cut down on our property by the owner. The owner was notified. He said they would be replaced. We're still waiting. Blasting was said to be kept to a minimum. Our house shook terribly for over 5 months, 5 days a week, 4 to 5 times a day. Our dog is now terrified every time he hears a whistle. Even on TV, he's only 4 years old. We had numerous items fall off the walls and shelves. It was a horrible experience, and I hope we never have to endure it again. Our point in discussing these issues is if they knowingly put the road in the incorrect place and did not follow the plans in all of these areas, why would we expect them to follow the approved plans going forward? For the foundations, septic systems, driveways, lighting, and who is going to hold them accountable if no one held them accountable before? Why do the neighbors have to pay the price for the owner's guilt? We believe the road should be corrected to match the Mylar. And if the project is deemed to be continued, we should be giving some sort of insurance that the approved plans will be followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sweet. Other members of the public wish to comment? You see anyone, McKeel?
I see no further hands raised.
Okay. Mr. Burton, you want to respond? Okay.
Can you hear me? Yep, sorry. Mr. Chairman, Matt Burton again for the record. So I guess just a couple of things I can respond to. Obviously, erosion control needs to remain in place until the site is stabilized. My understanding that it's not complete yet, and I would completely agree that erosion control should be left in place, maintained until that is happening. And you guys do have a bond to hold to make sure that that is happening. I would say landscaping obviously needs to be complete, but this is not the time of year for that to be happening. Maybe in a month or so, we typically like to say seeding, planting, those sorts of things can happen, around, April 15th, typically this time of the year. So that should be occurring when the time is right. As any promises during construction between the applicant and the neighbors, I'm not privy to any of those conversations to make any comments on those things.
Okay. What do you happen to know if there was, I guess a condition of approval was weekly reports on soil erosion and sedimentation control? It sounded like some of the conditions may not have been complied with, but I don't know if that's accurately, if that's, I don't know. Do you have a response?
Mr. Chairman, the abutter referenced deep approval and inspection. So a lot of this size in that 8-acre range would not only obviously erosion control was shown on our plans, but it also is triggered at the state level when you clear a certain amount of land. And this project does trigger that. I can just say that we proposed those plans. We were not hired to inspect them. I don't know who the applicant had in terms of either the contractor doing it or some other third party, but that work should have been done and should continue to be done until the site is stabilized to the town's satisfaction.
Okay. Do commission members or staff have any further questions for Mr. Bruton? Sharon?
Sharon Hutner here. I don't know if I have questions for the engineering, but I guess I have questions for us. I mean, what can we do? I mean, can we withdraw the approval of the application now? Is that one of the recourses that we have? I mean, not approve the current application as they're applying for it this evening.
We can talk about different things we can do. Obviously, if they don't comply with what we've approved, they're not getting in the house and we're holding their money. That's one thing we're doing now. We're not returning their bond. So there's a financial incentive for them to do what they said they would do. And they can't occupy the house and they can't build the house. They haven't started the houses yet. This is just the subdivision of the land. So it's, zoning and the subdivision are sort of separate things. But once they, they have to, if their goal is to get houses for their family, they ain't getting it. That's one major thing. And the question is there something additional we can do? And that's a different question aside from that. They have to have a plan that complies. Anyway, that is,
Thank you.
that is part of a bigger issue. Because, we've seen examples where people haven't followed compliance and so forth. There were allegations, well, you deliberately done, one of the claims, as I understood it, was, hey, look, there was blasting all over the place. You could have done it as originally approved because you're blasting all over the place. So why didn't you? Why, ledge doesn't seem to be a problem since you're blasting all over the place. So, Mr. Bruton, can you respond to that? That's my characterization of that's why they're skeptical. You did this, and that was the claim. I don't know if they know the state of mind, but they said you did this intentionally, that it wasn't an accident. That's at least what the neighbors openly said and believed. And what do you have to contradict that? Is it ledge or what?
Yeah, all I can say is that's what the applicant and owner hired us to do and told us and paid us to redesign in this new orientation to resubmit to you guys. I'll say I don't like being here as much as you guys want me to be here. I wish this was done proactively instead of reactively.
And Marcy's question sort of gave you an out. Oh, it was a different engineer, but it sounds like your firm was involved in the original plans. So why were you proposing a road in a location that all of a sudden became too tough to do? And why didn't you do the borings and so forth? Is that, is that malpractice on you guys?
So I'd say, Chairman, typically for residential development, we do test pits for septic systems and for foundations. Obviously, an 8-acre lot, you could test pit and clear this lot to the ends of the earth to find every little stone, rock, ledge, things like that nature. So I'd say it's not out of the ordinary to run into unforeseen circumstances. You could spend your life savings trying to uncover every little stone. I'd say I'm here to talk about the technical things. I think the frustration is more of the timing and the change. I can say we advise our client to resubmit as fast as possible, but I can't do anything without his permission and direction. And I got here as fast as the applicant would allow me to get back here.
Right. And I understand that, but let me see if I characterize this. Your statement is the reason for the road configuration difference is because of additional ledge. So the suggestion is that if you had built it out to the original configuration, you would even have to do more blasting, which the neighbors have complained about, saying that it's, was going on all the time and it would have been actually worse. Is that correct or incorrect?
Correct. My understanding from the owner, Mr. Chairman, is that, a significant amount of blasting occurred. The change in roadway orientation was able to minimize, even to a certain degree, less earthwork and blasting with the new orientation. Understanding that everyone still thought whatever did occur on site was still excessive as a use next to their neighborhood during the construction. I understand it was a major inconvenience from the testimony I've heard.
Okay. McKeel.
Yeah. Just as I know we're still the public hearing open, but we might want to keep it open. I think I'm getting to the idea or the comments that how do we ensure that we get this done this time and not face this again. I think the applicant needs to recalculate the bonds for the erosion control, the stormwater infrastructure. As I heard it, that they have calculations in a report, but it sounds like they still need to make further improvements on the stormwater. And then the landscaping. It sounds like there's associated landscaping even off-site to restore what neighbors had. I think that those should also be probably a bonded issue as well. Otherwise, the town won't have any recourse to ensure that happens in the future. So those are my comments. And I would say we probably should need to keep the public hearing open as a result.
We should keep the public. So you're suggesting we continue the public hearing, that there's an additional bond requirement you'd like to address, and it sounds like a further review of some of the drainage and engineering, or I don't know if that
Not
was
a further
part of
review.
that.
I think they need to recalculate their bonds
Mhm.
and make sure that what we have on hand either covers that or it would need to be increased.
If we're continuing the hearing, I'd also like a question. Are there significant trees that they said were going to remain that were taken out? Get a more clear, specific answer to that. I mean, the limits of disturbance are different, and have they already done it? In other words, besides changing the road, changing the lots, did they take down additional trees? Because I understand, Mikhail, you explained that the original plan had open space, but that was modified. But I'm just curious, what are all the areas where this departed from the original, just so we know? And then, yeah, I think the bonding thing is important. And yeah, I think it would be good to address. And I know, Mr. Bruton, you said, well, there's discussions between the neighbors, but I think there's one contradicted that there was a trespass and he cut trees on land that he doesn't own.
Yeah.
So let's find out about them. So
yeah, and Chuck, if I may,
sure.
On one hand, it's kind of regrettable that we're using the engineer as the designated piñata tonight. He has sort of been roped into this, pretty much without complete information, to defend what is essentially a methods and materials problem on the site. This is a contractor problem, not an engineering problem, primarily. I would like to see a large-scale plan of the comparison between what was proposed initially and where we are now. I would really like to see the blasting plan. I mean, it sounds like they hired Yosemite Sam to come out there and do the blasting, which is contrary to everything I understand about the way you manage blasting on a site, especially a site adjacent to houses. I mean, I doubt if there was a seismograph. I doubt if there's notification. I doubt if there was insurance. I doubt if there's a whole lot of normally required things for the sake of blasting. There's just a number of deficiencies in the operation on site, and I think collectively we need to come up with some kind of remediation, a physical remediation that will satisfy the neighbors and make that a requirement.
Such as landscaping, or what do you
Yeah, such as landscaping, improved drainage, a little more consciousness on the day-to-day management of the site, which it sounds like it's devoid of, from what I hear. I mean, I personally find it incomprehensible that somebody could manage a site like that adjacent to occupied dwellings, but it seems to be the case.
Thanks, Joe.
We need more information, and we need information specific to methods and materials, or methods and means.
Okay. Other requests from other commission members of additional information? We're going to continue the hearing. We're going to continue the hearing means it's going to continue forward, and you'll be able to speak at another meeting for members of the public. Just letting you know. Marcy.
So I do remember this project very well now. I do remember that they had hired Mike Ott as a neighborhood engineer. I know his work. I do recall having some questions about the grading as it related to our subdivision requirements. So what I really would like to have a better understanding is, because we obviously can't change the past, is the requirements that may or may not have been breached as a result of the subdivision approval versus when the road went in versus now the lot development. Because I do appreciate, the position that BL is in, coming in after the fact with the history and I do understand the scale of the types of engineering firms that have been out there and familiarity with certain job sites and things like that. And I do think that, I don't know if this was happening within our own change of planners, for example. We had a lot of changes in town hall, but, I'd like to see sort of the timeline recreated so that we can quantify really where things were taken advantage of outside of the specs and the regulations as they stood at that time. Obviously we have new landscape regulations on the book that, this will help prevent, but we do need to look at our subdivision regs and understand what happens so that, I remember driving by the site and going, when did the winery get proposed to go in on the bank? And I looked at the limits of disturbance between the two plans, and I could see that there initially wasn't supposed to be clearing there. So when you recreate the timeline, that's where I want to have some kind of remediation and accountability on the part of the contractor, and things like that. So if there's a way to do that, that's going to help me with my voting decision later as far as what's reasonable and fair and all of that. So we can really address, obviously there have been impacts, and Ms. Tweed enumerated them very clearly, and that was very, very informative, and I appreciate all that. But, the reality today is, where do we go from here? How do we try to correct the situation, have, our zoning enforcement out there overseeing and getting the contractor to be more responsible for what he's doing. I don't think Matt is the cause of necessarily the problem on this one. So, those are my comments.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Other commission members? Mr. Curl, I know you have your hand raised. We've closed the public portion, but if you got something quick, because we're going to continue the hearing, just give us a quick comment. If you're asking for more info, we'll get it to him. Yeah.
I did want to say thank you to Mr. Chadwick for his response. They did actually put seismographs, just so you're aware, for full disclosure. They put seismographs at both myself and I believe Mr. Tweed's house. And it didn't seem like, I wouldn't necessarily indict the blasting contractor, because it seems like they did alarms, they did seismographs. I mean, but it was massive blasting, but that was what they were paid to do. So I just, in their defense, I don't want anyone going forward thinking, like you said, that it was Yosemite Sam. So sorry, I apologize. Just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. Appreciate that clarification. Okay, then. So we'll continue this matter's public hearing. McKeel, you suggest our next meeting?
Yes.
And when is that? So what's the specific date? Do we know?
April 2nd.
No.
Okay.
March 2nd?
Continue to. Okay. Okay, so we're going to continue this matter as a public hearing to our next meeting, which is also another Zoom meeting at 7 p.m. On April 2. And, just like this one, same Zoom meeting. So thank you, everyone.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, McKeel. It's Michelle. Excuse me. Isn't the date April 16th?
Oh, there's no first meeting in April. You're correct about that.
Right.
So April 16th.
Passover, I believe.
Yeah, it's Passover.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I think it's the 9th.
I think it's the 9th. I have it the 9th on my calendar.
Me too.
Okay.
So
I don't have my schedule. I'm going to take your word for it.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
We'll get the date right.
Yeah. No, we did a couple months were because of holidays. We did. It's not always the 1st and 3rd. You're right. So Michelle and everyone, thanks for doing that. Can someone confirm? We can't continue the hearing until we say it's the right date. Otherwise, we screw it up. I've
got the 9th according to our calendar.
Okay, and you're looking at we approved the scheduled meetings whenever it was, December. And
I was going to say, Dan, if you want to check the schedule, it's by my desk on the bulletin board. Dan Robinson.
I am not in the office.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were in the office. Okay. Nope. Sorry about that. I'm not either. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to tentatively say we're going to continue to our next meeting, which we believe is April 9th at 7 p.m. But if that changes before the end of this meeting, we will correct that. Keep an eye out for notices. If there's no meeting, isn't there a town website? Don't we have a calendar somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to check that, Chuck. Good idea. Just going to do that.
Okay. Michelle, you're doing that, or who's doing that?
I'll do it. I'll look.
Okay. I just don't want some technical thing. Aha. You said the wrong date. Yeah.
April 16th.
April 16th. Okay. Is there only one meeting in April?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so it's not the 9th.
Gee, I got it for the 9th.
It's the 16th.
Okay.
And that's on our calendar? That's
what's posted on the website.
Okay. That's what's posted on the website. So we would have to have a special meeting. Okay.
Yep, I see that too. Planning and Zoning Commission 2026 meeting dates on the town website. April 16th. Only one meeting that month.
Okay. Okay, I know that when I look at our agenda, the next public hearings are on the 16th, but I assumed, I don't know. Okay, well, then that's it. We'll continue this matter to our April 16th meeting. And that should give plenty of time to find out these issues. So, okay, so thank you, everyone. So then so this matter's continued. That brings us into item number 3 on our agenda, which is Mary Beth Tucker, applicant and owner, 19 Queech Road, special exception for an oversized accessory structure. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, 420 East Main Street in Branford, representing the Tuckers. Let's see if I can share my screen. Sure. Okay, hopefully you can see the map.
Yep.
So this is the property is located at the corner of Queech and Northford Road. It's approximately 3.6 acres, with a little wetland down in the back. The house was built here in 2004. What they're looking to do is put a barn in this corner of the property for a number of reasons. But there are, and this map was from the as-built from the house. And so these tree lines were from the area originally, but we went out and located the trees along the road where the driveway is. We don't feel that we need to take any down. There's just a little bit of trimming of some branches on this closest tree, but they will just have a gravel driveway, barn with the lean-to section in the back. This is all pretty flat lawn in here. But in this corner, there are some trees and I'll show you in the photograph in a minute, but the reason why the owner picked this location is because it kind of tucks it into some existing vegetation. This is the type of barn he's looking to build. Very attractive looking barn from the heavy timber companies. So this is the hopefully you're seeing the street view here, but this is the area. The driveway would come in here between the end of the wall and this tree, and the barn would actually be tucked so the back of it's kind of close to this tree line. So when you're coming up Northford Road, you won't even see it at all because of these trees. But this is the lawn area. Again, it's very flat here, very little grading. We are proposing landscape strips on both sides of the barn because not planning on putting gutters, so the rain will run off and it'll give it a splash zone. Plus, having a couple feet of stone there will help infiltrate the roof water over the roof, the rainwater over the roof area. And so we're here for a special exception for oversized garage because we are larger than the 750 square foot footprint and taller than 15 feet. We did have a few comments from the town. One was about, primarily the only real comment was the providing. I had inlet protection here for the closest catch basin. The town engineer asked us to, because this road is flat right here, I think he was concerned. So we're going to add inlet protection on all 4 of those catch basins. Not really a problem. But that's it. Again, it's an accessory structure. It is about 1,600 square feet. It's a good sized barn, but it is, more than 3.5 acres of property here. So, but that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. I believe, Dan, did you do the staff report on this one?
That's right. Yep, I'll share my screen. Okay, let me zoom in here. So we're at 19 Queech Road, special exception for an oversized structure. It lies within the R5 zoning district, largest minimum lot size in town. This is about a 3.65 acres. That's what we got in the property here. This is a quick overview. The yellow is the property boundary. The green is the wetland delineation. As you can see, all work is beyond that 100-foot upland review area. So the wetlands are not a concern in this matter, but soil and erosion controls still will be installed. And that red area is where the 1,600 square foot barn will be, 32 feet in height. Again, we're in the R5 zone. It meets, besides the oversized nature, it meets all applicable bulk requirements. Let's see here. For the landscaping standards, Mr. Preddy already kind of pointed this out, but existing vegetation is allowed to be used as meeting the current requirements. There's a 270-foot plus stretch of tall ferns and grasses along Northford Road, as well as over a 100-foot line of coniferous and deciduous trees along Queech Road, in addition to the 160-foot stone wall with 2 adjacent pine trees, at least a few pine trees there along that wall. And the new barn has proposed a landscaped 3-foot stone strip along the edge of the footprint that doubles as stormwater collection point for roof runoff. In terms of parking and loading, the use staying the same as single family. There's enough parking on the site currently. This new project doesn't change that parking requirement. In terms of grading, again, all the work is beyond that 100-foot upland review area. In terms of drainage and stormwater control, the property is served by public water and public sewer, and that is tied to the single-family building. The barn is not going to be sewer. There's not going to be a bathroom in it. I mean, they might apply for a water tie-in in the future, but that's not part of this application, and that will need its own permitting. And inlet protection will be installed in the nearby catch basins per request of the town engineer. The driveway, there is a new driveway. We allow for more driveways on residential lots if the frontage is large enough. In this case, there's over 550 feet of frontage, which would even allow for 3 driveways. So this second driveway is conforming in that respect. And in terms of traffic, the use for this barn, as stated by the applicant, is for tractor storage. It's a garage for housing large vehicles, so there's no really large traffic impact associated with that. Moving on to, this is an aerial view from the spring. The ferns and grasses aren't really fully grown there, but they were there over the summer. That red arrow is kind of showing where the barn will be, and as you can see, there's the existing tree line. And let's get to the elevations, 32 feet in height. This is showing the different profiles of the barn. And this is a special exception, so we hold it to the special exception criteria. The location, size of the site, nature and intensity of the operation is involved. It has to be consistent with the area. This is an R5 zoning district, largest residential lots in town. The minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. this lot is over 4 times the minimum lot size, leaving ample room for an oversized tractor barn. Barns of this nature are not unheard of in this area. There is a similarly oversized barn at 40 Brook Hills Road across the street, as well as multiple barns on the abutting property, 54 Northford. And 54 Northford is a farm that keeps horses. And then south of the property on Mill Plain Road, there's also an oversized detached garage. So they're not unique to this area, or they're not unique. So Queech Road is in a more rural part of town, enjoys larger lot sizes and green space. A large barn would be suitable for these more, let's say, call it pastoral surroundings. In terms of the location, nature, and height of the buildings, it's going to be 1,600 square feet, again, 32 feet in height. Besides those 2 dimensions, it does adhere to all the relevant setbacks. It's farther away from the road than the house, so it's not closer than the principal building, which is the home. So there's no violation there. Again, parking capacity is sufficient for the single-family use. This project does not mandate any new parking spaces. And emergency access is not an issue as well. There's a new driveway with a turnaround circle at the end of it. I believe at this point I will just be repeating previous points I covered in section 6. But there's the emergency access. And again, soil and erosion controls will be installed so that there's no negative impact to the wetlands, even though it's beyond that 100-foot upland review area. Moving on to our required reviews. The town engineer, I think I have these swapped. There was no issues right from the inland wetlands. The town engineer did have requests for the inlet protections, for the catch basins, and the applicant has updated the site plan to show those inlet protections. So our recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the special exception for an oversized accessory structure. It's a very rural part of town. It's a very large lot, and oversized structures are not rare for this area. I could always delve into it more, but that's kind of the main gist of it. I'd be happy to answer more questions if the commission had them.
Chair, thank you, Dan. Mr. Preddy, just a question. This is a oversized garage for storage of tractors?
He has a couple, Jim Preddy again. Yeah, he has a couple of tractors. I think he's got a classic car, and I guess it's most importantly, it's not for commercial use. It's not an ADU. It's private use, accessory to a single family dwelling. Even if he had a collection of ping pong tables, I guess it wouldn't really change anything. But yeah, he's got, at least from what I've been told by the owner, he's got a couple of tractors and that sort of thing that he would like to keep in there. Yes.
Running a business, I mean, I don't have tractors aren't the type of vehicles that I typically have around, but I kind of just curious, but he has.
I will tell you, if that barn showed up in my house, my wife would fill it in a year.
Okay. 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 So the tractors, it's not like he's running a business from his house. No. He is just, it's a hobby or something. It didn't look like a farm that he needed a tractor for this farm, but maybe he uses them on the property. I don't know.
I think he has hayed part of the property over the years.
Okay. Okay. Other questions for Dan or Mr. Preddy from commission members before we open it up to the public? Hearing none, then
question, but
yes, excuse me. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, not a question, but I know many people who collect tractors. That's actually a thing.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Marcy?
Are horses and that kind of thing, paddocks allowable in the zone?
Horses.
It's such a large structure. It seems like, the use today might be one thing, but it also, I'm just trying to anticipate down the road if it sets up any other types of uses, like for horses, for example, and if that would be allowable or if they would have to come back.
So from staff, they are allowed as an accessory use. We have them in section 3. So it's allowed in residential zones such as the R5. Specifically, horses require no permit. There's just a minimum number of horses per lot size. So it's one animal per 1.5 acres. And then after that, a half an acre, every additional half acre can give you an additional animal.
So if they've got 3+ acres, it's 4
so
horses.
It's 1 for the 1.5 and another 3 for the other half acres. So it's 4.
Yeah.
Just curious, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant or staff before we open up to the public? Hearing none, then any member of the public wish to comment? I see one person raising their hands.
Yep. So Linda Latinist.
I apologize for my Zoom name. I'm Linda Barr. I'm from 176 Mill Plain Road. I live across from the property in question. My husband would also be with me here tonight, but he's fighting his way back from JFK. So I'll speak for the both of us here tonight. I wanted to underscore something that was said just earlier about Zone 5 enjoying green space. And we do enjoy the green space. And my understanding is that that's why Zone 5 is zoned the way it is. And I do have some very significant concerns that this is not just an oversized structure. It is an enormously oversized structure, oversized compared to the zoning requirement, which is much, much smaller. In fact, the proposed building is 5 times as big as the allowed accessory structures. And that concerns me on a number of counts. I will stick to my primary concern, which is whether the stormwater issue has been addressed. That's criteria 10. So I'm reading that to meet the provision of 10, this stormwater drainage must conform to accepted engineering practices, comply with all standards of appropriate regulatory authority, and must not unduly burden the capacity of such facilities. So the comment, the staffed comment does not seem to refer to that. The inlet protection was something that was recommended by wetlands. So
that was the town engineer. Sorry to interject. I had the names swapped. That was just a human error on the labeling.
Okay, it may have been a significant thing that is very helpful to clear up here, because I'm not seeing in anything that I've been presented with the hand of the town engineer approving the stormwater management for the building. So has that happened?
Yeah, the town engineer is a required review on this application, and the comments that he provided were regarding the inlet protections, and that step was cleared off by the town engineer. Okay, so it was reviewed by the town engineer.
Bear with me. Where does it say this? So I'll know for next time I get interested in something like this. I'll know where to find it.
So as part of our permitting process online, there's various steps. Now it's not. I could physically type it out, but the comments that the town engineer has provided, they are pasted under the required reviews. I had the inland wetlands and town engineer names swapped, but those comments that the town engineer provided, I pasted them into the document and stipulated that the inlet protections should be placed. Other than that, if there's no other comments and the planning and zoning application continues, it can be assumed that the town and that department has, if there's no other comments besides that, then the rest of the plan complies.
I see.
So if there's an issue with it, they raise it, and in this instance, that issue that the town engineer did have was addressed, meaning that the other ones were not worthy to be raised because they were complying.
I got it. So here it is, required reviews, 10.2.9, town engineer, no issues raised. And then 2.9, this should be town engineer.
Yes, the second row should be town engineer. Yes, that was just a mistake on the labeling on my part, and I apologize.
Okay, so then I'm a little confused. Is it that no issues were raised, or that the...
Nope, the inland wetlands department had no issues raised. So just swap town engineer and inland wetland.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry for being slow. It's hard to...
No, it's sparked by a labeling mistake on my end. So yes,
Okay,
inland
town
wetlands
engineer.
department, no issues raised. Town engineer, please place inland protection.
All right, and there's my husband in the background, home from JFK. Okay, so the town engineer is satisfied that the structure does not cause undue burden on the stormwater management system of the town.
That's correct. And the concerns that the town engineer did raise were pasted there.
Were pasted there. Okay. And that was, I think, in terms of special exemption concerns, the only one that I can raise as a kind of a plea is that the proposed structure appears to be bigger than the size of my house and bigger than the size of many of the homes in my neighborhood. And that would represent a very significant, in my mind, change to the nature of the neighborhood, and that the original zoning obviously had some purpose. And there lies my concern.
And I have one concern. You know,
this is David Russell, co-homeowner.
That, you know, it's going to be used for storage of, quote, tractors, right? But, you know, it's not a farm. So it's probably like heavy construction equipment. So it's not zoned commercial. So, you know, are these going to be for his private use on the home, or is this part of his business? You know, he's a paver and a constructor.
The tractor storage is what the applicant provided. If you wanted to run a business, a commercial operation, that would need to be rezoned and permitted as such. So that would not be allowed. This is a commercial use was not proposed in this application and would not be allowed without various further approvals. But perhaps Jim could speak more to that.
Right. And before you got in, I asked the same question, and Mr. Preddy did address it and said, yes, it is. It's a residential hobby use. It's not part of a business. At least I believe that's how Mr. Preddy characterized it.
I see. Okay, so these aren't going to be owned by his business. The trucks and the.
It just. No. And Mr. Preddy, you're muted, by the way. But yes, yeah. Okay. Are there any other Ms. Burr and Mr. Russell? Any other comments?
No, thank you.
I think that was my main one. I was concerned it's going to look like, you know, a construction business site.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wish to comment? Does Mr. Preddy need to respond? It sounds like there were two questions. I think one was clarified about the drainage in the town engineer's comment, and you're addressing that. You may want to go over that. And then the other one was, is this, you know, it is large, it's big. I know the staff report indicated there's others in the neighborhood, but this is big. And then the concern that this would be a construction, you know, if it's used for his business, that it would, you know, look like a construction site. And I think you addressed that during the regular, in response to my questions, but perhaps I don't know if you want to amplify on anything with that.
Yeah, agreed. Jim Preddy again. I did address that. It's for private use only. He told me he has a couple of tractors, but if he had a classic car and a little bass boat or whatever, I mean, it's typical, you know, detached garage for private use kind of thing. Not for his commercial business. He has a big facility for that somewhere else. I think you could see on the street view that I showed before, he keeps the place pretty immaculate. So I don't think he bought, you know, heavy equipment around anyway. The comment about 5 times the size.
Just park backwards in the trees. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm talking. Who's that? So the comment about 5 times the size, anything over 750 is why we're here. The footprint is 1,600. That's roughly twice the footprint, not 5 times. So I'm not really sure about that. The stormwater, Dan addressed, but even if we weren't providing the stone strips for the roof runoff, anything from this barn would run down toward the back, toward that wetland in the rear. It wouldn't run toward either one of the roads. So town facilities aren't really a concern in this particular instance. I think that was all comments I had written down, at least anyway.
Okay, thank you. Very quick, Ms. Barr, we typically just one and done, but do us, you have a quickie. I'm sorry, you can unmute.
Oh, you're
first.
muted. Yep.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I can do the math. The volume is the area times the height. So the height is also twice. So if you have twice the bottom and twice the top, it's 4 times the size. Number 2, I care about the water that's going into the wetlands and the water that is the water going into the wetlands if that were to happen. So I am reassured that the town engineer has signed off on this project. I certainly don't pretend to comment more than that. I just am glad that the town engineer has signed off on the project.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Preddy?
Nope. No, thank you. That's pretty simple, actually.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from commission members or staff? Marcy.
Just speaking to the volume, I mean, a 32-foot high structure could potentially be 3 stories. Is this a 1-story structure and just a lot of airspace, or like why the need for the height? I mean, is that just indicative of the barn design, or is there some use on the 2nd or 3rd floor that they may be wanting to introduce?
There is some high space in there, and I think part of it is just that design, that particular design. But there is some 2nd floor, I'll call it mezzanine, but it's all wood. There is some 2nd floor space, I believe, in that barn. Yes.
There's no water in it. Is that correct, or is there
No, there's no plumbing inside the building. He was looking into getting water just to have a hose bib on the outside of the building, but there's no bathroom or plumbing inside.
Okay.
Electricity?
So yeah, he'll have to have lights. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from commission members, staff?
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred?
Just a general comment. Whenever we have an application for an accessory structure, or accessory apartment, I don't know, in my mind, the implications is generally smaller than than the house that's on the property, or smaller than the houses in the neighborhood. And when you get a building, that's what it is. They're going to call it a structure, but it's really a building that's more than a story high, and whatever. It just leaves me wondering that not so much maybe for the applicant, okay? It may be absolutely legitimate what he wants to do there. I'm not really sure how people store tractors, but I guess they do. But if that house gets sold, that becomes, it's still got to become before zoning, but the structure is there, and it makes it easier for someone to take that and make a 1-family house into a 2-family building residence. And that's always my concern. I know it's being hypothetical, but when I hear we're going to store tractors, I mean, if you collect tractors, there's no building large enough because you can keep collecting and collecting and collecting. But, to me, my impression has always been of an accessory apartment being generally an in-law apartment type thing, where it's a bedroom, a little living room, a little area to hang out in. But when you start getting 2 levels, 32 feet high, 1,600 feet, that's the size of a Cape Cod. And that looks like it's more than an accessory apartment, in my opinion. Now, it may be totally legal, but it just seems to cross a line somewhere for the people that have to live in that neighborhood that will have that kind of a structure being built in their neighborhood. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Mr. Preddy, do you have any comments?
Just, other than, tractors is what he stated, but would it make a difference if I said classic cars? Like, I don't know that it really changes anything.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
But, as far as, the building is 1,600 square feet. I mean, this house is 6,100 square feet, according to the assessor. So, I mean, it's not disproportionate to the size of the lot and the size of the house that's there. And as far as what somebody could do in the future, possibly illegally, I don't know how we could be held responsible for that.
Oh, I agree with that too.
This guy owns it. Yeah. I mean, it's not
Jim,
like
mine were random thoughts. That's I'm not saying the applicant is right or wrong or legal. That's not all. Just that those are the thoughts that came in my mind as you made the presentation.
Understand.
And Mr. Preddy, I had a question. When I looked at the lot, it's 3.65 acres. It's a 1 acre lot. You could subdivide it, or I don't know if you could do an as of right split if there hadn't been subdivided. Maybe it has, but or re-subdivide it. And it's got a lot of frontage. I mean, you could just draw a line and you could put a second dwelling, I think, pretty easily, right? I don't know. That's what my thought was, that if someone's worried about it turning into a second house on the property, well, you could probably do it legally by subdividing the property. You got the land. And you wouldn't have to build a road or anything else. That was my react. I don't know what your thought is on that. Was I overthinking that? Yeah.
No, quite honestly, I think there's enough property actually to make 3 lots there, but he's decided to not do that and have his accessory structure away from his main house so that it's all really part of the same yard.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments from commission members? Marcy?
I think it's just a theoretical discussion, and I don't want to point fingers at what Jim or what the Tuckers want to do, because I do think that the proportion of the barn is, in comparison to the 6,100 square feet, legitimate. But as a commission, when we approve an ADU that's over 750 square feet, it's very easy to convert that into, and maybe they're not looking to subdivide it and sell it. Maybe they're looking to have, people that assist them with the care of their house. It's a big house to maintain. I mean, I wouldn't want to vacuum that. They might have people that they want to keep on site and give an independent kind of use to later, or it could be a barn. I mean, there's all these other uses that the size of that property affords, that before zoning often happened on farms, where they would take a portion and have, apportion it to family members and so forth. And I guess, I'm not saying necessarily to vote against this application. It's just something that I don't think zoning has really reconciled with, in terms of, I don't know what the legal appropriateness is, maybe, because, a lot of towns grow up from farms, and the way farms functioned historically was the principal property, you take pieces, build, pieces for family, or for workers to help manage the farm, and and then zoning came in and said, like, okay, the lot has to be excised with this boundary, and that, and this is kind of the reverse, where he's almost creating a farm sort of methodology because he's got the space and he's got the means and he's been quite successful. And I'm just trying to reconcile that with the appropriateness of the way our zoning law has come to be. So that's just sort of food for thought. No real question, but thank you.
Just so we're clear for everybody listening, an ADU or subdivision or any of that stuff would require a whole different set of applications and trips to this board and others, and the subdivision would require wetlands approval, and so there would be a lot of other steps for someone to do those things that you just mentioned.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we'll close this matter as a public hearing, and we can probably discuss this in a little bit. So thank you, Mr. Preddy. Okay, that completes our public hearing items. I think what I'd like to do, maybe why why don't we take this one up, this public hearing item that we just for 19 Queech. Do you want to just go around and give us your thoughts about whether we approve this application? Joe Chadwick?
Excuse me. Contextually, I think, and I don't have a problem with it. Use-wise, I do not have a problem with it. Based on the concerns that I've heard expressed, maybe a condition should be placed that it is a building, it's a storage building. And we should be explicit about that. But other than that, I mean, it is a somewhat rural setting, and yes, it's a big building, but barns are big. So I really don't have that much of a problem with it.
Thanks, Joe. Fred?
Well, I have mixed emotions both ways. You know, if an applicant comes before this commission and they've met all the regulations and stipulations, then I mean you have to vote for it. I like Marcy. I think food for thought is that it's just a big building. I don't care how big the house is; it's irrelevant. Actually, this is an accessory building, and there are other possibilities that could take place, which is not what we're voting on tonight. And that's where I find myself torn between. Only because we've all seen it. You know, someone comes in here and gets an application and says, I'm going to do A, and then something in their life changes and it becomes B, and just creates a problem for this commission down the road. So I think what I would say is probably what Joe has said, that if it meets all the regulations, then I would vote for it because there'd be no reason not to. But I'm not happy that they would put that size of a structure on the piece of property, regardless of the size of the lot or the size of the house. I think that's irrelevant, quite honestly. So, one side of me says I would vote against it, but I think if Mikkel thinks or Dan thinks I'm wrong in the assumption, they've met all the regulations, then I would have to vote for it.
Thanks, Fred. Joe Vayuzo?
Yeah, I'm pretty much for what they're trying to do there. Jim Preddy is dead on right about if anything more than what they're saying is going to be done, they got to go through a whole host of applications and regulations, and they're not even proposing any plumbing there. They're just proposing. I mean, it's basic right now. I think it could turn. And everybody that's talking about what if, and all that stuff is all true, and it all can happen. But it just doesn't happen. It has to go through a process, which is pretty, and it could be subdivided. I mean, these things can happen anywhere where anybody has 4 or 5 acres of land. So, but right now he's proposing a barn. He's proposing nothing but electricity, maybe a water line for a hose, like he said, but nothing more than that. And it's in the corner, and it's hidden, and according to what Jim said, that this building probably won't even be seen from any point on the Queech or Northford Road. Whatever. It's a basic structure, and it could be amended down the road into something else because there's plenty of property there to subdivide. All these things everybody's saying it can happen. But it's not happening now, and it's not just going to happen. It's got to happen through a process, which we can talk about then if it ever happens. But right now, what they're proposing, in my opinion, is a barn. And looking at the pictures of that barn, it's a pretty nice barn, very nice barn. And I don't have a problem with it because this is what they're proposing and only what they're proposing. And anything more than that, it has to go through a process. And we or the public will deal with that when and if that happens. But right now, he's been there for a long time, I understand, and that property's been like that for a long time. I think they said 2004, so basically 22 years. So the way I see it, and like Fred said, he meets all the regulations, he meets all the criteria, and it should be approved. In my opinion, I would approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Marcy?
Hi. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to note that his primary structure is sort of like on what would be the third 1 acre parcel on the site if it were subdivided. I do know the area very well. I do know that I think it would be very visible to the neighbor across the street. And as you come up from the center, I think it's well screened coming from the backside. I think it's an attractive structure, but I do think it's a very large structure. And again, I think our regulations are, we have to vote within the context of the regulations, and it says greater than 750. It doesn't say how much greater than 750. And so I'm sitting here considering whether the land supports it, and I can't refute that. And I think the very, development that he's done in terms of the size of the pool and the size of the home and that which, is not particularly in the view shed coming up Queech Road, um, is going to, on some level, make them want to control, what happens on their property and not necessarily subdivide it into 3 lots. So I have a comfort that that's not likely to happen unless, somebody wants to start having weddings out of the barn, which I don't envision either. But I would be curious if, they would have to come back to us if it were horses or something like that, not just livable structure. And other than that, if everything complies, we legally need to vote it because it all complies. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Marcy. I'm in general agreement with the consensus of the other commission members. I think that the major concern of the neighbor was the drainage, and I think the town engineer addressed that. I think the plan was modified in response to the town engineer, and he was satisfied. And then you get to the more subjective element about the visual impact, and it is a big structure. I think that is true. But that said, I think it is a nice structure. It is well designed. That's kind of, if you look at the criteria, it says the design is appropriate. And I know there are, the staff report mentioned other barns in the area. I think this one may be, it is large. I think it's okay. But I think one reason I think it fits is because of the size of the property. Again, even if this were a house, if we're just looking at the appearance thing, I don't think it's too much density because it's a 3 acre property, and so it's not, even if you say, oh, it's a big visual building, it's prominent, and I understand that from some areas it is and some areas it isn't, then that's not necessarily out of character, which is one big building per acre, and this is still under that. So I'm okay with it from that criteria. So it sounds like we have a consensus to approve the application. Dan, maybe you can pull that up. I mean, Joe Chadwick, you mentioned, if the concern is about the future use, we could add a condition that says that the building should not be used for dwelling purposes, and it should be used for storage only, or something like that. I mean, we could do that. I mean, I think you don't need to, because the approval is, they'd have to come back. But if we want to sort of remind them of that, if the property gets sold, I would have no problem doing that as well. I don't know what other people think.
My only thought on making it explicit is that if they do something contrary, it would be contradictory to this approval, as opposed to contradictory to some other collection of vague references in the zoning code. So that would give a more direct recourse.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we could add as a condition that, is it the concern that it shall not be used for human occupancy, or how do you want to phrase this? Or is it shall be used for storage purposes only and not for human occupancy? Throw both of them in, or what?
Yeah, yeah.
How does that look? Or do you want to stipulate barn to be used for storage and not for?
I would say used for storage, not livestock.
They are allowed to use the horses though by right, as I understand it, based on the acreage. I don't know if we've run into an issue there.
Okay, then
Okay, you gotta put 2 after no, or not.
Yeah,
right.
The barn shall not be. You need a shall.
Yeah.
You need a verb. Yeah, or whatever. And you could
For
see
folks
right.
used for storage. Yeah. I have barn shall be used for storage purposes. The barn shall not be used for human occupancy without securing proper permits.
But storage only, purposes only.
Yeah. So yeah, okay.
Do we run into any issues there? Sure.
No, it's just what if they want to put a horse in there?
Storage of horses, I guess you could.
Okay. Okay.
This is terrifically minor, but barn is approved rather than shall be used. I would just say the barn is approved
for storage purposes only.
For storage purposes.
Should we add the barn? Or we have a the?
Yeah.
Yes.
Forgive my brevity.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? Okay. Someone make a motion to approve this application with the finding and conditions as set forth in Dan's staff report as just amended by Dan.
Fred Roos will make that motion.
Motion by Fred. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo.
Fred Russo is in favor.
Joe Vayuzo.
Joe Vayuzo in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair's also in favor. So that application's approved. The other public hearing item is the landscape regulations. But before we get to that, let's see what other business we have on here. And then maybe we can, if we're up for it, we can talk about that. So let's look under new business, which is we have Arthur Jenkins, applicant, 67 North Branford Road, LLC. This is special exception modification, increasing indoor recreation space. That is one that we would, our agenda says public hearing to be set, but I think we have authority if to waive the public hearing if it's not a significant change. Is that correct, McKeel and Dan?
Yes,
that's correct. Yep.
And has the applicant requested us to do so, or did want us to waive the public hearing on this?
I believe the applicant, Kevin Summers, is here. He could
okay.
Request it now if he wanted to.
Mr. Summers, are you requesting us to waive the public hearing on this application?
Yes, I am. We went through a lengthy special exception process, and we have this use already in other parts of that building. And we're just looking to, take a couple more tenant spaces and do the same thing.
Okay.
Indoor recreation.
Okay. Then any commission members have any thoughts before we make a motion to waive public hearing? Are we okay with this?
Yeah.
And just the nature of this it's just a change of use within the building to increase the size of the indoor recreation area that is already existing there. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then Sharon.
Yeah, what is the recreation that's going on in this space?
Sure. What is there? What is the indoor facility? It's a gym. What is it? What's the use? Mr. Summers, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the application, then we'll be in a position to know whether we should waive the public hearing. I think that's the question, right? Okay.
Sure. So the building itself already has a couple of gyms for indoor recreation. This one here is going to be, I believe the tenant is going to do maybe some yoga as well as some dance classes.
And what's it replacing? What's there now?
Storage.
Okay,
warehouse.
So you have a storage, and you want to increase the size of the gym, I guess, or the
Correct.
Indoor recreation use. Okay.
Yeah, there's two tenant spaces in the building that are being used for storage, warehouse space, and the tenant wants to sign a lease and move in. Well, she already signed the lease, but she wants to set up her dance studio and take over those two spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone need further information? If not, someone want to make a motion to waive the public hearing for this special exception modification.
Chadwick makes that motion.
Motion to waive the public hearing by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
Fred Russo, second it.
Second by Fred. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Fred Russo?
In favor.
Joe Vayuzo?
Joe Vayuzo in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Chair is also in favor. Okay, Mr. Summers, you're on. You want to explain again what's going on? I know you sort of gave a brief summary, but what if you could continue for us?
Sure. So again, the building itself, technically we have it as the landlord accounted for 14 units. We already have a total of 4 or 5 approved through special exceptions previously for the indoor recreation use. So we're looking to amend that to add these 2 spaces. And this tenant, it's a separate tenant, but they want to do the same thing. You know, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of dance, belief for kids, and just, you know, we will need to do some construction. We're going to combine those 2 spaces. However, that would be separate, and building permit would be applied for after approval if we get that. And not sure what else to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Summers. Dan, did you do the staff report for this?
That's right. Yeah, I can quickly go over it. Let's see here. All right. Yep, so we're at 67 North Branford Road. They're seeking to expand the portion of the building dedicated to the use of indoor recreation. Originally, the property was granted a special exception to establish this use back in 2024. It's part of the IG2 zone. That indoor recreation is allowed by special exception. They were granted that, but it had a condition that it would be limited to what is now tenant space 1 and 14. The applicant received a second special exception to apply that use to tenant space 5 and 6 on the opposite side of the building. As Mr. Summers said, they're proposing to increase that original special exception to 2 adjacent units and merge the 2, which would require a separate commercial building permit. Common activities covered under the indoor recreation use include gyms, sports, athletic facilities, pools, rinks, etc. Certainly dance classes would fall under that gym and sports / athletic category. This is where this is a site plan. The yellow is the property boundary. I'll scroll down. We can actually look at the units. So in 2024, this space that I'm hovering over right now on the right side with the yellow highlight, that was the area that was allowed for the indoor recreation use, had a condition to stay to that area. They had a second special exception not long after to, again, get that indoor recreation use on the opposite side of the building in units 5 and 6, which I believe now are 1 unit. And now, essentially, they're looking to modify that first special exception on this side of the building to increase that use to the 2 adjacent units. So that orange boundary is going to be what the new unit divide will be like there, because these 2 are proposed to be merged. There's an aerial view of the property. That red area is going to be where that indoor recreation use is, also in this corner over there. This, again, is a modification of an existing special exception that met all the criteria in the past. So we're really working off that original approval, which was already deemed in conformance with the planning and zoning regulations. But we did send it to other departments. The engineering department had no issues. The building commented that they had a question about the space currently listed as Group B and S2. A building permit application will be required to be submitted for partial change of use within structure and any interior alterations proposed. And the applicant responded that yes, once this application is approved, if approved, we will start working on the building permit application. And the fire department notated that the full plan review to be completed once a permit is received. That would be a building permit and the zoning permit. On-site inspection of property required to be conducted. Approval of this application is administrative and does not constitute a fire marshal inspection of the property, meeting current fire and life safety codes. The commission is weighing, does it meet the special exception modification requirements under section 9.8? This use already exists on the property in multiple different tenant spots. It's been deemed compliant with the planning and zoning regulations for those two prior special exceptions. It's not substantially changing the original approval. It's increasing the space dedicated for indoor recreation use by about 2,000 square feet, a 38% enlargement that takes up about half the building footprint. In terms of parking, there's an easement with the property to the east of it, which is 65-8 North Branford Road. So there's no concern with parking here, as both those properties share a much larger lot that spans both of the parcels. Given all that, the staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve this modification of special exception to increase the portion of the building dedicated to the indoor recreation use to include tenant space 12 and tenant space 2B, as well as tenant space 1 and 14 and tenant space 5 and 6 that are already existing. The findings and conditions, that it conforms to the planning and zoning regulations. That's our finding, with the condition that all previous findings and conditions associated with special exception PZ 23-6.6 shall remain in effect, except for the second finding, which limited the approval exclusively to that first area. And that's all I got.
Chuck, sure, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Questions, comments from anyone?
I have a question. You mentioned that they would need to use parking, and isn't that across the street on 8 North Branford Road?
Oh, no, not that they would need to use it, but they have a parking easement. So it's an increase. Going from a gym from a storage, it's going to increase the amount of parking spaces needed. That's that calculation, but there's sufficient parking on site as well as with the easement with the property adjoining it. So parking would not be a concern.
That's what I'm trying to understand. So the 8 North Branford Road is the same owner? Or the owner of 8 North Branford Road gave them access to the current parking?
Yeah, there's an easement that this property enjoys on the other one to use their parking. It's shared parking between the two properties. I don't believe it's the same owner, but Mr. Summers could possibly comment on that.
I just thought 8 Branford Road was across the street. Isn't this over by the Parthenon?
So this is 667 North Branford Road. This is the same side of the street right here. This is the road running up there. So this is all these are connected.
Right, and I thought 8 was across the street.
I don't believe 8 Branford Road was part of this. I think it was maybe 65-8, but it's 8 Branford. Yeah, 8 Branford, North Branford Road is not one of the subject parcels.
Okay.
Dan, what is the increase in parking generated by the change of use?
I do not have the exact amount on it right now. I could get that to you in a moment, but I don't have the exact calculation in front of me. But it was just a quick assessment that there's more than enough spots on the property and the adjoining property to serve it.
If it needed 3 extra spaces, they had it there with the existing parking was sufficient. Okay. Okay. Mr. Summers, did you have a comment?
I can't figure out how to raise my hand, so sorry if I. But to answer your questions, yes, those three buildings, 67-1, which is the building that we're talking about today. I believe it's 63 and 65 are the two buildings behind it on the same property, and they all share that same parking lot. These buildings are actually condos. So they're all together. And the only way in is that driveway right there in the picture. So everybody has the same easement for all the parking. So all the parking is on that same side of the road, all shared between those three buildings. And there's a lot.
A lot of parking. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, does someone want to make a motion to approve the application with the findings and conditions in the staff report? You want to just go down a bit there? That's it, the compliance with the regs, and then the condition incorporating the prior conditions with the exception of the limitation.
Chadwick makes that motion.
Motion to approve by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
Fred Russo, second.
Second by Fred. Further discussion. All those in favor. Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick in favor.
Fred Russo.
In favor.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy. Marcy.
Thought I was off mute. I'm in favor. Sorry.
Okay. And chair's also in favor. Okay. And minutes. We sent out the minutes from March 5th. Anyone have any questions and comments? If not, someone want to make an appropriate motion?
I'll make a motion to accept Fred Russo. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of March 5th, 2026.
Motion to accept and approve the March 5 minutes by Fred. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm used to being, I gotta do a roll call. Joe Chadwick, you in favor?
Chadwick in favor.
Fred.
I guess I'll say aye. No, yes, I'm in favor.
Yeah, okay. Joe Vayuso.
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy.
Yep.
And chair's also in favor. Okay, so now
Chair,
minutes
we
are
have
approved.
two old business items.
We have two old business items.
15 Lanfear's Cove Camp. That's the one that we could take action on. 26 Pawson that was staff level. That was misplaced on there.
Yes. So let's go to that. For some reason, I jumped right into the new business. So let's go back to old business. Mary Beth Flood, applicant owner, 15 Lanfear's Cove Road. This is coastal site plan demolition of existing cottage. Is the applicant ready for that one? Do we have an applicant?
It doesn't look like it.
Is it Cora Lear? That's not the applicant, right?
Don't believe so. Expecting a Mr. DiFilippo.
Was he here earlier? Do you know?
I did not see his
no.
name.
Okay. Do we need him?
I don't believe so.
It's pretty minor. I could sum it up. But if you're not comfortable, we could always wait until the next meeting.
Well, why don't you give us a 3-sentence summary and we'll decide whether we need them.
Yeah, so this is, it's 15 Lanfear's Cove Camp. We've had a number of these cottage tear down and rebuilds, as you will probably recall. They've been pretty administrative in nature, but they're within the coastal boundary, so that they're automatically a commission level review. We referred it to DEEP for comments. That 35-day window elapsed. We didn't receive any comments from them. This tear down rebuild is outside of the floodplain in the same footprint, akin to similar applications we've had over the past few months.
Okay. What do you guys think? You want to handle it with no applicant, making a presentation, or do you want to wait for him?
Do we have any maps and a staff report?
Yeah, we do.
I have a staff report. Yeah, I will note the applicant didn't provide like detailed architectural plans because it is a tear down and rebuild in the same footprint. But I certainly have a map I can show you. I don't have a rendering though. Let me present that quickly.
Do we know if the height and massing is similar to what's there, or are they doubling the height kind of thing?
That is a good question. It should be the same one. That'd be good to follow up with the applicant. On the last one that this same contractor did, the height was, I think, increased a little bit, and they did a little bit of a dormer lofted area. So I would not be surprised if that was a similar thing happening here. But certainly the footprint is not increasing, and it would not be higher than 35 feet, as all these cottages are one story. But this is 15 Lanfear's Cove Camp. It's that one outlined in red. Here's an aerial view. This is the unit in question right there. I have a street view of it, I think, down there. Yeah, this is what we're looking at. Pretty small, but they're not allowed to increase the footprint as it's a legal non-conforming structure. So it'd be a tear down or rebuild in that same footprint. That's what we're looking at here. In terms of the coastal site plan criteria, there's no increasing of the footprint. There's no shoreward expansion. It's going to sit on the same footprint as the existing building, as I've probably said 10 times now, so I apologize. But there's no adverse impacts to the nearby coastal resources. It's outside of the floodplain. Reconstructed cottage within the same footprint. So the property is located within the Lanfear's Cove Association, which is densely residential. There's no future water dependent uses. And these teardowns and rebuilds already have to go through the Lanfear's Cove Association first. So they need their local approval to go forward with this. And they'll, of course, need to comply with the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control, such as silt fencing during the construction. But it doesn't need to be elevated, as this is outside of the floodplain. No issues were raised by the town engineer. Building official had no comment. Deep, their window to respond elapsed, and the inland wetlands, there is no jurisdiction. So those are most of my comments. Again, it's up to the commission what their comfort level is on this.
So Sharon Huntner has a question. So we don't know how tall it's going to be. Is there a limit?
35 feet, yes. Yep.
Can you put the site plan up again so I can see if there's anything behind them?
Yep. Let me get to that there. There is, let me zoom in a little closer here. This is the aerial, not the site plan, but there is one person there, and there's people to either side of them.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, given that it's such a tight, I mean, obviously they're all used to this, it's common, and they're all increasing to get above the floodplain, which I certainly appreciate and understand. But I just wanted to clarify the order. This is only for camera approval, and you're saying that the association themselves will have to go through a review process where the neighbors will have a opportunity to see the plan and
that's handled first. Yeah, similar to the previous applications, they had to go to the association first.
That's been handled, and the association is approves the plan, or just the concept that they raised the structure?
There might be a letter attached to the OpenGov application. I do not have that in front of me at the moment. But again, if the commission wants more information, we can certainly push this off to April 16th. So if you had the applicant here to speak on it.
Yeah, I mean, like I have no opposition in theory. My concern is the impact to the neighbors and their opportunity, and this wouldn't be a public hearing process, right?
No, it would not.
Right, so their opportunity is coming through their own association, which they already had that opportunity.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my only concern is that the architecture is not, necessarily a flat roof to maximize 2 or 3, 2 full floors above the floodplain, but has a sloped roof that's, consistent with the character of the neighborhood, and that, they may lose some square feet on that second floor, but I mean, it needs to be visually consistent, and they didn't submit anything. So that's really my only concern on the project, and that may not be applicable to a CAM approval. So,
Right.
So, that being said, right?
I'm not sure what the commission's comfort is in placing a condition on architectural drawing to be submitted before this comes into effect, if an approval, but that's something that maybe we could explore as well.
I'm not sure that we can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure this is the CAM approval is the jurisdiction with which to regulate that. I mean, Chuck, jump in if I'm making a mistake here.
The question, site plan, does the site plan require architectural plans as part of the regulations? We can always waive them. And usually we do see them for most of them because they're fairly elaborate, and also they're elevating. If you're elevating, they show what the base flood elevation is and where it is, and show that the occupied level is higher, and if they're doing all that, and so you show
this
that
one is out of the floodplain. It's outside of the floodplain. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's starting outside of the floodplain?
Yeah, it's already out. It's not within any FEMA flood zone.
So the expansion is purely for the flexibility of space within the home itself.
Yeah, it's all within the current footprint. They're not elevating it because it's outside of the flood zone.
So I guess the question is it going to be 2 full stories plus a roof, or is it 1.5 stories? Because the height will impact the neighbors to the side and to the rear.
McKeel, feel free to jump in, but feel free to jump in.
I looked on OpenGov. They didn't submit anything, but I think given the commission's questions, I feel that we will get the applicant to submit the architecturals. They have to have a plan for the contractor to work off of. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just not sure the CAM approval is the forum to be judging the architecturals. And that's what I'm looking to Chuck to advise me on.
Yeah, I don't mind. There's fair questions, and they got to do it at some point, and they're not here, so they can at least describe it, even if they don't submit plans. We could just, is it 1 or 2 stories? I don't even know, or 3 stories. So if you want more information, I don't have any problem asking. But I don't have any problem going forward either. So, I don't know.
You just don't want to approve something that we think is 1.5 stories and then have it be, 3+ stories and having the neighbors be up in arm because, but the neighbors don't have an opportunity to speak because it's a CAM approval. It's not a public hearing. So that's what I'm trying to kind of qualify.
I think if you want to defer, we could say, look, you weren't here, and we wanted to give. There are a couple of questions we just wanted to clarify. I think we can just say that if you want to do that. And you're right. I get it. For CAM stuff, we don't usually look at it's a stretch to look at visual impacts. Just I've heard it for view of the water. And someone say, we want to have a corridor so people can view the water from a public street, and you can see that under CAM. But that's not happening here.
So some of it's in response to the some of the applications earlier tonight. Where neighbors have a strong opinion about what's happening in their neighborhood, and as a public official, just trying to do due diligence. But even if it, and maybe I'm overreaching, because like I said, if it's done modestly and generally in keeping and not, excessive, I don't have a problem. But again, I don't know that I have the jurisdiction to vote on it against it if it was excessive. That's all I'm saying. So.
Yeah, Sharon Hutner here. I agree with Marcy. I think we should see it, what it looks like, or at least get the applicant to describe it.
Right. Get a little more info. We can do that. Okay, so I thought the applicant would be here, but
me too.
Okay,
maybe they were got tired. Who knows?
Yeah.
Chuck, Fred Russo, I'd like to ask Dan just one quick question, which is not about I'm just curious, with the density of those homes in that Lanfear Cove area, where do they park their cars? That picture you showed, I'm just curious. There's a lot of houses there. I'm just thinking, where's the parking on these? I mean, not that we're voting on any parking. I'm just curious. I looked at the picture. I can't figure out where people park their cars.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's several. I mean, I'm assuming most of it's along the road.
What about that parking lot at the south?
There's all. Yeah, it's outside of the property. That's outside of the Cove Camp.
I'm just curious.
I've
I know it's not in our jurisdiction.
On the grass next to the house on the grass.
It must be pretty tight there during the summertime, especially.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was my question. I know it doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but it just caught my attention. I just wondered. Yeah. It very, very close. All the houses, and it looks like there's just a lot of dirt there, not even grass. So.
Oh, this is from like April, so this is out off season.
Oh, it's lush after April.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. McKeel, correct me if I'm wrong, but as these are all non-conforming structures, they would not be able to increase vertically or horizontally, so they would have to keep their current shape. I don't know if we can go off that assumption, but any increase to the. Go ahead.
We've essentially deferred to the association, and they want to keep the look and feel of the property. So a lot of these reconstructions are fairly modest.
Yeah. There is a history, 20 years ago, Joe Valluzzo may remember this. They came in with they proposed a new regulation. It was either a PDD or something that would have allowed basically some more flexibility, and it went in and out, and I don't know. I don't even remember what happened to it. This is back in Shirley Rasmussen day, and I think Dave Gibson was the lawyer or something. Wow. It was a long time ago, and I think it kind of stalled, and then and since then, I think we've just been dealing them because we've had a few of these we've reviewed as CAMs, and they've all sort of on the same footprint, because originally there was a desire to expand them, and then there was an internal fight. Because people were trying for variances and they had internal fights and go forth whenever everyone wanted to change a window, but somehow they seem to. I thought the association got more involved, and basically we defer to them because that was the process for the public, for the neighbors to complain and to get that ironed out, and they had a whole voting process that they needed to do. That's what I think, because it hasn't. At one point, it was controversial, but it hasn't been for a decade, and that's going off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear that process has happened for this house. That the neighbors are in agreement with whatever the improvements are, and then I'm happy to sign off on it. But
okay.
Chuck, one more last thing. I also think, wasn't there? I remember something. I haven't been on the board, obviously, as long as you have, but I've been, I think, about 14 years now. But I remember something coming up, and I always thought there was something about the land, the deed of that land. It wasn't. I thought it was not single ownership per plot of land, but it had something to do with all the land. It was almost like a co-op, sort of, the way it was treated. I know that's
they don't own the land.
What was that, Marcy?
I don't think they own the land.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I remember what you're talking about, because I'm not sure what they were trying to rectify, but they don't own the land. I know that much.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they're not individual lots. It is one big
camp.
Yep.
Right. So if you're going to expand beyond your lot, your building area, it's like it's the balance of coverage on the camp as a whole.
Right.
It's like if one person gets 1,500 square feet from 1,200 square feet, it's almost like you have to allow them all to go up to that height. That would be my interpretation moving forward. But the side yards don't even really allow it. I think they're 10 feet apart, if that.
Yeah.
The applicant did note that it was 524 square feet going in, and then the ending square footage would also be 524 square feet.
Oh, really?
So if that alleviates or
that answers everything.
yeah, that was
I can vote on it now.
the starting and ending square footage was the same. So
they're not going up.
That kind of answers that height question without having the drawings in front of us.
They're not if they're not improving and expanding in any way, then that tells you right there they're just replacing.
Well, the only expansion is just open vaulted ceilings or something. There's no floor coverage.
Do they count the square feet of just of the footprint? They count if there was a second floor, wouldn't they count that as part of square footage, or is it still just the footprint?
No, they'd have to count that, I would think.
Yes,
that was the original conference. The height, adding second story, whatever that would trigger the whole thing.
Yeah, they were starting to look like dominoes, especially ones near the water. They were small little one family, one height, and then now they're becoming 2 stories or something like that. That's what they were. Yeah. Some people were complaining about. I think I remember, especially the ones that were close to the water.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll defer on that one.
Okay.
To our.
Do we need to?
Yeah. Well, we will. Okay. So that then brings us, the question is, it is 10 o'clock. Do we want to go into landscaping or do we want to defer that to April 16th?
I think we should probably put it off to the next meeting, but I think I need a quick vote or go around the room and say, how do we want to treat LOD? Do we want to keep it the setback approach or do the impervious cover approach? Because I think you have to pick one or the other. You can't really do both. And that'll give us clarity on what we should be doing.
Mikhail, I know we've been meeting and we haven't gone since, but I was reading a little bit and thinking about what was said tonight, and I was in my chat, and chat brought up the idea of a temporary limit of disturbance. And I'm not sure how this relates to either method, but this was something that I wanted to bring in the conversation for at least people to think about. How many times during construction, there's the final disturbance based on the plan, and then what are the areas beyond that that are needed in order to construct it because of staging and logistics and equipment that are temporary and going back to, where the new build is. And I don't know if that helps or hurt, how that applies to either method necessarily, but I just thought it was a change in perspective. Because Joe was essentially coming, and I thought it was really clever, whether the cover math works, our impervious coverage allows for, in a commercial zone, 60%. If somebody builds out to that 60%, that's a full limit of disturbance, but can they build within that 60%, say, or do they need space outside of that for staging and logistics that then get restored, and are there other environmental regulations in play, like the size of a tree that needs to be protected that would be outside of the logistics, or a wetland that has a setback and a review process, or things like that are already clarified outside of the discussion of just the physical limit of disturbance based on construction. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
I thought part of that would be addressed if Joe's suggestion is eliminate all construction activity as being covered, eliminating that term so that it applies to grading, filling, excavation, and other land disturbing activity. So if you leave out all construction activity, then I think you can still park stuff and do limited things as long as you're not grading, excavating. You can have temporary things going on. At least that was one of my readings of it. The bigger issue again is how do you regulate this? Do we want to have the impervious surface plus a percentage as a way to address limits of disturbance, or do you want to use the setback approach? After looking at this, my thought was, and I understood Joe's main point as for the reason for the limits of disturbance, it allows flexibility in the sense that there may be maybe a setback isn't appropriate because there could be a significant tree within an area, and yet it still preserves the notional limit of disturbance, but yet it gets rid of the notion that it, of having setbacks. The other things for the setback ones was it is, I think it's easier to calculate. It's a common way of looking at zoning altogether. And in my mind, and there was some, Joe's suggestion was it's somewhat arbitrary. I think all setbacks are sort of arbitrary. That you can have a 10-foot a rear and a front, and sometimes it's appropriate or not. And the remedy for if there's a problem with the setback is you get a variance, or in this case, we built in the special exception criteria too. If there's an alternative way that you can't comply with the setback, you either apply for a special exception, and I had a suggested term, I think we should beef that up a little bit, or you apply for a variance. So my general reaction was if picking between the two, and I agree that other things like limiting the term all construction activity, and there were some other parts in here that I thought were good. But if I'm just looking at the bigger question of setback versus impervious surface, I'm not quite sure if impervious surface, I don't know if they're in residential zones, and some of this could apply in residential zones. And I have a less feel of that, but setback is a way that we regulate lots of other things. There's a built-in arbitrariness for it already, and it can be calculated fairly easy, and there's a rationale for not having for having a setback, because that's where the disturbance is likely to be, and anyway, I was leaning more towards that. That's what I was thinking. But with the idea that you need to end around to have that flexibility. So that's if you made me choose, that's where I would come out. So what do Joe? I think you've stated, obviously Joe Chadwick, that obviously I think well articulated where you stand on that. Other things you want to add?
It's just that the vagaries of having a stipulated setback in certain conditions will give you a greater work area than you have a site area. And that is self-defeating for the concept of a limited disturbance. You really want to have some degree of protection for resources on site. And by arbitrarily stipulating an offset dimension, it will not universally work. It's a total sliding scale on building area versus site area, and the places where they overlap, you're contradicting the purpose of the limited disturbance.
Thanks, Joe. That's a good summary. Fred, thoughts?
I really do not have an opinion on things that we talk about, but I really don't. I'm actually interested what both Mikhail and Dan feel. They're the two individuals that the application comes before, and I would be interested to hear what they have to say and how they view it, because ultimately they're the ones who have to live with whatever we decide. And I think I'd like to hear what their input is that would help clarify what works best for the town for their eyes, through their view and their eyes.
That's a great question. Okay, Mikhail and Dan, what do you guys think?
So, I mean, obviously, I've worked on the language, and what we did here, I've always felt it needs to relate to the footprint of whatever improvements are happening. So therefore, the setback sort of creates a relationship to that footprint. I think the calculation is really it leads you to a number, but it doesn't lead you to how that relates to the development. So I think that's where I get my disconnect from. I just
Can you
also
say that
know it's
again?
easier for me to tell an applicant, okay, you've got 25 feet off of this point, as opposed to me saying, okay, well, you're allotted, 70% of the lot, and how are you going to implement that? So,
Would that be
Dan?
easier for the applicant to understand also, Mikhail? What you just explained?
I believe so, because you basically would draw a line around, okay, you have your structure, you have your infrastructure, your parking area, and here are the buffers or the area you can work around. 10 feet from here, 25 from here, 45 feet from here.
Okay.
That's as a result of the design. That's not the head of the design.
Correct.
So like say that let's talk about trees. If the onus is on the designer to, and this is maybe where I'm leaning towards Joe a little bit, if the onus is on the designer to design something and they start with a blank site and they have to apply like the steep slopes and the wetlands and list large trees, that may drive the design of the property, and in so doing, that's going to start to create the logistics. And if they value the 34 or 36-inch caliper tree that's in the middle of the project, and they design the parking around it and the building around it, what's to say that, which method allows them to, like, does the setback method start to impinge on that, or can they just say, we're protecting this and follow the rules of protecting the tree and create an outer limit of disturbance in an inner donut hole, for example, because, or even just the way that, understanding maybe like a urban site, it's kind of like planner meets engineer and designer, because, you have to implement the plan after the designs happened, and the regulations are trying to guide the designer to not hamstring their creativity, but to also respect the goals that we have for our environment and our process. And I guess I'm not clear which does it better, to be honest. But I don't know that the setback solution addresses some of the logistical things that may not be obviously in the regulations, other than, sedimentation and erosion controls and things like that. There may be other logistical matters as far as like the stockpile, or, being able to stockpile or not, where they might have to say, this is too small a site. When we dig the basement, we have to truck it off, or, and that's where, I think this starts to get a little bit blurry, because no site is the same. And I appreciate that. How do you do this in a way that gives staff the ability to reg and say, no, this is allowed and this isn't? So it's kind of it's a very difficult question in my mind, and I don't want it to stop the regulations going forward, and I don't know what the answer is to decide on, quite honestly. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Thanks, Marcy. So do you have a choice, or do you care, or do you not know? Okay, don't know. Okay.
I'm really struggling with it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm trying to give staff some guidance here. Joe Vayuso.
I'm struggling just like Marcy. Joe made some good makes a point that sounds a couple points sound pretty good, and so does McKeel about and easier to use the setbacks, because now you can measure, you can see it. So this it gets a little tough one way or another. But I guess in terms of making it easier, well, then again, it may not be, but easier to someone to see it and to design it is the setback situation. With the setback language. But Joe makes a good point too here and there too. I think and you're gonna find favoritism in either way. So it's a very tough one to go with. But I think overall, I would probably just say with something easier overall. Maybe if I had to choose something, I'll just stay with the setback. And I'm not comfortable with that. But if I have to choose something, I probably would go with that route. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Sharon, any thoughts? I mean,
I would just try to go with the method that would be more easily enforceable. Because after what we've seen tonight with lack of enforcement, I really think that whatever would give the staff and a better ability to enforce the regulations is what we should go with.
Joe Chadwick, I think your point is that a setback things you made the distinction, the site area and the building area, and that there could be instances where I guess where you have a small lot in a big building that there would be no limits of disturbance. Was that kind of did I understand that correct? Or
well, the limits of if you add everything up, the limits of disturbance plus the building would be far in excess of the site area. So in that case, you're contradicting the point of an LOD. So,
yeah. So you would be able to disturb a whole lot more under that scenario. Yeah. Is that yeah. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. And
my concern is primarily how do you build this under the two site situations that we tend to have in Branford, sand or rock. And in most cases, the staging and a lot of logistical events occur in the parking lot, or what will become the parking lot. But you still have problems of how do you make a cut? How do you access the cut? How do you reinforce sites and just do work? So that is my primary concern. My secondary concern is that even though there are dimensions given, they do not precisely reference where the dimension is taken from. 25 feet from the building footprint, okay, we know that. 45 feet, okay. Driveways and parking 10 feet from the edge, okay. I'm not sure that's enough for a parking lot, but we'll not argue about that now. Public sanitary storm sewers 20 feet from the infrastructure. In my previous discussion 2 weeks ago, is that centered on the infrastructure or is it 20 feet on each side of the infrastructure? Makes a huge difference on a deep trench. Private stormwater or similar infrastructure is down to 10. Why is this only 10? Because you can still be down many feet and between the angle of repose, and if you have to blast, you've got blasting mats and overburden, and it's I don't know how you manage that. Other improvements necessary for the site, such as required construction logistics. I have no idea what that means. 10 feet from needed element or improvements. I don't know what to do with those words. And I'm saying this as somebody who, does logistics plans and sets up jobs. And I'm just, if I had to do work with this, I'm not quite sure how I do it, how I'd make a creditable representation of what needed to be done.
I think also the setbacks it's one dimension, but the lot size and zone can vary. So, when we have, R1 zones versus R5 zones, I mean, I know this isn't for residential necessarily, but, big sites versus small sites, the smaller the site, the more impact the 25 feet off the building has. And in some cases may extend beyond the property line or may not need to extend 25 feet if, the grade is such or the logistics are such that, they can build from the back forward, say. Or there might be another, instance where, if there's just so much variability. I don't know how you can pinpoint it. And to me, like to Sharon's point, and I agree, we need to be able to enforce whatever the logistics plan is. We need to have strong reinforcements so that, erosion controls will get done. But I don't think the intent of anybody is to make it more difficult to construct what's proposed, or, or the intent is to, damage the, resources that we want to save. I think there's other language in the reg that, talks about saving certain resources, but, that was where I sort of started my line of thinking today, was like, let me go back to the intent of what we're trying to accomplish. And historically, the disconnect I'm seeing is, we rely on someone like Joe to say, here's how my logistics plan has to work, given this site, these parameters, this design that's a result of all the other regulations around saving trees or what have you. And now my plan is such, and I need to impact the site to here. And that's where I want to trust Joe's experience coming forward, but then I can appreciate Mikhail's saying, how do I enforce here if it's not a uniform distance from the building, say, or, it's much easier to apply a uniform solution, but I'm not sure that we can without creating headaches. I'd like to test something, somehow, and I'm not sure what to propose. That's why I thought, I'm not sure what to propose, because I understand the perspective that both people are coming from, and I think they're both right in a lot of ways, but I don't know that it necessarily meets in the middle, and it's really a wholesale change from what we're used to as an industry, as professionals, not necessarily planners, but professionals are used to, as far as, you get to a site, you figure out your plan based on the other requirements, and you say, okay, if I've got to grade this off and I have to grade it at a 3-to-1 slope, my impact is at the bottom of that 3-to-1 slope. And it may or may not be the distance that's indicated for the limit of disturbance impact. Right. And so I don't know how to rectify that. And I can appreciate that Mikhail wants to have a sort of a line that he can check, but that the ground is, depending on the slope of the site that you start with and the project and the grades that you have to accomplish, it's like that temporary disturbance area, you're gonna have impacts up to the bottom of that 3-to-1 slope, but you're gonna restore it back to the edge of the parking lot. And, that's why I'm proposing a sort of temporary disturbance area as opposed to a hard and fast line, and maybe it's something that needs to be a little bit more fluid in order to regulate.
Well, the logistics plan would indicate the limits of disturbance, and they can be easily transferred into flags or stakes on the ground so that anybody can come and inspect it. And the actual wording of a limit of disturbance is, anything you're digging into the dirt. So if there is a place where grade has to be mitigated from a proposed grade to an existing grade, that is within the limits of disturbance. So that would have to be accounted for as disturbed earth. But as far as regulating it and monitoring it, once there's an approved plan, that gets staked out, that gets flagged, and the flags get not moved until, final grading and final seating's ready. I mean, that stuff like that is enforceable, and it is done.
The other thing is the regulation isn't solely limits of disturbance. There's lots of other things going on about native trees and other things that you should do in commercial zones. I mean, one of the points I thought Joe was made is that you could have, for smaller lots, you could have a scenario where there would be no limits of disturbance. That was kind of what I had, was reading into what Joe said, because if you add whatever, so many feet from this, maybe you're at the property line or something.
Yeah.
And my response is, well, that's maybe okay for smaller lots. I mean, that's, that if for a smaller lot, then, it's the other parts of the regulation that we were still requiring, stuff in the front, whatever. For commercial sites, you need some sort of landscape stuff going on, which you'd have to put in, whether new stuff that you'd have to put in, and it just, maybe you should be entitled to clear a lot for some things. So that didn't necessarily trouble me. So and I'm kind of working that the setback model is something that's incorporated in zoning, including ways around it, which there are two ways: the variance technique and also the special permit technique in the regs. But in some ways, do you need more expertise? Do you need for smaller projects to determine the? Yeah, I don't know. I was hearing what McKeel said. Okay, what do I tell the person that comes in? Okay, setback, they can get that. The other stuff, I see that appropriate for a larger site development, and that is kind of what the model is. A lot we're thinking, what about at exit 56 out there when they ever develop that? Those are the big sites. If they ever put a biotech park, we want to have good stuff in there. But the reality is, these things are going to be applied for the special exceptions for the modification, the redevelopment plans. I'm trying to think all the times where we had to apply our landscape regulations and found excellence in landscaping design where there wasn't, because somebody wanted to put in an addition on something. And that's what we're dealing with. That's more what comes for us. So I don't want to, I want to have a model that fits both, and because that's where we see it most.
Maybe it's not the same model, maybe the small site is more of a McHale oriented style, and the larger, new development is, if you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on engineering, I think you've got to, but like you take a subdivision application and, I can see the difference in quality of engineering, and we just saw neighbors hiring another engineer, and then we saw a third engineer come in, and now we're trying to track, our enforcement along that. And did the regs require them to, I think Joe had a great idea, whatever that line is, do the regs require them to stake it? You know what I mean? That right there is a visual barrier, or to fence it, or just like we have in the new regulations about protecting the trees as far as the drip line and all of that. So
just a thought, could it be possible to write two different regulations? So would it be possible to write one for a smaller piece of property, and then have the regulation that applies to that more appropriately, and then have a second regulation for a larger piece of property that would use maybe a different system? So we wouldn't have to have the same regulation for every size property. Is that possible?
Well, the regulations now don't require a logistics plan, am I right?
No.
I mean, so maybe if they provide a logistics plan, I think it does require to indicate where stockpiling is. But if an engineer is providing a phased plan or a phased logistics plan, I think I think you should give them some latitude to, maybe there's an initial limit of disturbance, and once the first phase is done, there could be things in that logistics plan that, can be incorporated with the intent of the regulation, which is to not have, the entire subdivision stripped all at once and all exposed with erosion, and yada yada. But done piecemeal, with a smaller parcel, to be able to, for McHale to be able to say, look, you've got this line from the building where you don't have to worry so much. It's still measurable, and we're going to note it, but unless you give us a reason for you to be beyond this line, that's what it is. I think that's, maybe there is room for both. I don't know.
I don't know. To Sharon's point, though, one of the difficulties I had was a 4,999 square foot building has a 20-foot offset. A 5,001 square foot building has a 45-foot offset. What's the difference between the two, and how do you set that switch point? I don't know how to set a switch point like that.
Joe, would the answer be that you would determine it by the size of the lot, not the size of the building? So you'd have a regulation for, like we have regulations for small lots or narrow streets or whatever. Could you have a regulation that said, if the lot is under, and I don't know what the size would be, a certain size, this set of regs apply, but if it exceeds that, and I know what you're saying, but I think in more practical terms, we're probably not going to get an application that says I have a lot that's 4,999 feet and no one says 5,000, but we are going to get applications that come and say I have a third of an acre, I have a half an acre, I have so there may be some magic number in there predicated on the size of the lot, because once you know the size of the lot, I mean, there's just so much you can do with it, and a smaller lot may allow you a greater area of disturbance because it's so small. Bigger lots, you have more to work with. But I kind of agree in principle with Sharon is saying that, trying to have one regulation that fits all is almost impossible. And so in the end, maybe we have to look at the size of the lot as the first thing and then see what that lot can fit on. And whatever that formula is, I don't know what it is at this moment, but just talking out loud, but whatever that formula is, then if the criteria meets the small lot description, certain rules, regulations apply. If it meets the exit 56, a different set of regulations approach. But I don't think the kinds of applications we're going to get are going to be so close like that it's going to make a difference. And if there is, there could always be a way to get a variance for that 1 foot over, 1 foot under. I think that's what I think.
Well, that was the theory of using impervious surface ratio, because that is the ratio of the building plus the parking divided by the site area. So it's the maximum amount of permissible construction on the site. And that is something that on the industrial and business uses is consistent. So by using that and indexing off of that, I arbitrarily picked 0.1 to increase it by. I did not run a bunch of math with the generally available sites that we have to test that. The only testing I did with that was what I showed you tonight.
Joe, let me ask you, but if you do use your method, does at some point either going up the size of the lot or down the size of the lot skew differently? You know what I'm saying? I mean, somewhere in a like a graph, there's a high point where it works the best. Then there's places on each side of that graph it doesn't work as well. I'm just wondering, in your calculations, if the lot gets bigger and bigger, does the formula fail? Or if it gets very small, does the formula fail?
As the lot approaches the minimum, that's where the if this is using the designated offset dimension. As you approach the minimum lot size, the LOD is in excess of the lot area. The larger the lot size, the more useful or the more manageable the offset is. So, I'm not the offset concept is useful on very large lot sizes. You have a very large project, very large parking area. 45 feet is pretty generous. But on larger areas, larger projects, you're looking at, 50, 100,000 square foot buildings. I'm not sure how many of those are on the horizon for us.
But for
happily.
larger sites,
Hmm?
doesn't the setback method work for larger sites?
Yes,
Because
that's what I said. It works well for larger sites.
Right. But I think for smaller sites, my point is maybe you should be able to remove a lot. I mean, I kind of think that if it's a smaller site, then I think in order to get a viable thing, you should be able to remove a lot of the existing vegetation, and then the other parts of the regulation kick in. That was kind of my point. I mean, and that's going back to the whole developer friendly stuff. So I don't know. I mean, you could say what are we protecting? I'm not sure. The idea is to prevent excess gratuitous clear cutting. That's what I think of. That's the reason we want a limit of disturbance. And if you have a small lot and you have to put a lot on there, then it's not gratuitous. You probably need it. So I didn't have a problem with the setback, resulting in very unlimited disturbances for small lots, because frankly you need it, and that's where the other parts of the landscape regulations kick in, that we require additional landscaping of natives and things like that. So that was why I thought that was fine. So
Chuck, but if the majority of the properties that get developed in our town are not the Costco style projects, why can't there be a regulation, whichever works best for that? And then, I think as Sharon's implying, then for those exceptions to the rule that are that large, Joe's formula would work best. That's what it seems like. And I don't see why we can't have two separate regulations that deal with 90% of the stuff we deal with within a certain range, and the other 10% there's another regulation. If they exceed, and that might be like Joe mentioned, 100,000 square foot building. How many we're going to have like that? So there'd be a regulation, would probably be rarely used, but everything else would still fall within the ones that are most common to the type of applications we receive.
if you have a 100,000 square foot building, you're going to have a 500,000 square feet lot. I mean, you're going to have a huge lot for a huge building. And I think the setback works for that, as does either of them works for that.
Right.
I thought one of Joe's points is that you will not be, for the smaller lots is where the limits of disturbance, may end up the area that you could clear is greater than the site area. That's what I heard him
Yes.
saying. And I'm saying I'm okay with that. Because it is a small lot, and you probably should do it in the other part is of the regs. I don't.
How do you put the two together then?
So
how do you put those two concepts together so it makes sense to an applicant?
I mean, what I'm saying is that the setback model covers that, because it covers the small one. It will result with more stuff being disturbed, but I'm okay with it, and it's okay for the large one. And I understand his point is arbitrary. Well, what if it's 4,999, it's one thing, it's 5,001. I get that, and frankly, any setback works like that. If you look at for the R2 zone versus the R13, you see you can have a lot size that's one bit under, and you'll always have that. And that's sort of part of what people are used to in zoning, of looking things from the setback methodology. And that's why I'm sort of bouncing back to McKeel a bit, is that he's saying that is, you can explain that to the property owner for the 80% of the applications, which are the redevelopment, like, even tonight, we got a change of use. Do we have to, comply with the landscape, it's stuff that comes in. And what was that one? I remember we were struggling with the redevelopment of the auto station up by that bordered residential property. Yeah. And, that was somewhat of a new, but we were just trying to get the landscaping to work, that was more of the thing that I thought, okay. And I think we relied on excellence in landscape design to just prove something. We were concerned about the neighbor in the back and have that and getting that done. But landscaping was touch and go because it was a developed site, and that's what we get a lot. And I don't know. And I'm
we're here at 10:30 at night.
That's why I thought, we always have this special exception thing, but even though that's at the option of the of the applicant. What I thought one of Joe's, one of the good point is that, the setback thing is kind of arbitrary, that there may be sensitive trees and maybe we could put it over here, preserve more, unvegetated stuff over there and save this tree over there. And a setback model is sort of, no, I could do it. And so maybe we should, I do that. That's why I thought the special exception alternative of, just throwing out all this stuff, which include, we wouldn't have to comply with limits of disturbance if you have another methodology that helps preserve. I tried to beef that up a bit. They have to preserve certain types of vegetation, historic vegetation, or more trees. Other ways, if you find another way, because that was Marcy's point, is give flexibility, to the applicant. That's why I kind of came up with some language to throw in that special exception thing, and also that it survives Mackenzie. So anyway, that's what I was thinking.
I think I've got enough information. I think I can work on something and give something people to digest. Okay.
Good.
That would be great.
Well, at least we close the public hearing, right? Yay.
Yes.
Right.
I only asked that we get rid of soften.
Yes.
Yeah. And
this is not an H&G TV script.
And Joe Lovey, I thought a lot of your comments were good. Get rid of construction activities, and I like that you pointing out what about easements and things. I thought those were good. Yeah,
and I like his idea, and I like his idea about marking the site.
Oh yeah.
Then we might not have had the problem that we had with this last application from tonight. So,
but that came under subdivision
regs. In the regulations.
Unfortunately, that came under subdivision regs, which we haven't really reviewed and corrected yet.
Well, but if we start in the landscaping, then we'll at least have a start.
Yeah, I think we need to get there. I agree, Sharon.
Okay, well, McKeel, you said you had enough. Does that mean we can?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we all had enough at this point.
It's Chuck. It's like old times. Come on.
Oh, wait, Dan, Dan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I had one thing to add, and actually this is unrelated from landscaping, but I missed a note in the 15 Landfears Cove camp. In their project description, they say demo existing cottage and rebuild new cottage, same size. So I don't know if that changes how you interpret it, but they stipulate same size. So I don't know if that changes your comfort level. If not, we can push it to next month. But
I would still like to talk to the applicant.
Okay. Yeah, get him here anyway. Yeah.
All right, understood.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, I think thank you, given the hour.
Okay, great. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Were there any correspondence?
Oh yeah, was there any correspondence?
Oh, correspondence.
Any planners report, McKeel?
No, not tonight.
Okay, great. Okay, then. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I do. Sharon Hutton.
Yeah, you technically probably should be a. Sorry, Sharon, but give me a regular minute.
Oh, I can't do that, huh? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not
okay,
legal.
Mercy made the motion.
I'll second Fred Russo.
Second by Fred. Any further discussion? All in favor, Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Fred?
Fred's in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
All in favor.
Marcy?
In favor.
And Chair's also in favor. Thanks. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Well, take care. Well, we have.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.